Chapter 1366. With a thought, Chu Luiyue immediately summoned the pure gold sacred armor. Golden light flickered, making her skin look like jade and her eyes look like stars. Then, she took a step forward and held the Scarlet Heaven sword in her hand. These few actions couldn't be more simple, but Chu Luiyue still felt a heavy pressure. She gripped the Scarlet Heaven sword tightly. Now, she was certain that this was not only the tomb of a certain expert, but also his divine realm. That was why the flow of time and space here was so different from the outside world. Moreover, after she broke through to rank 9, it still posed a great threat to her. The concentration of the surrounding origin power was still increasing. This already posed a slight threat to the human body. If she couldn't get out of here as soon as possible, even Chu Luiyue couldn't guarantee how long she would be able to last here. She turned around and walked towards the door. With her movements, the surrounding space also flowed, bringing along the floating black fragments. The air seemed to have become sticky. Chu Luiyue didn't stop until she was 3 steps away from the door. She took a deep breath, held the sword with both hands, and raised it high. A powerful force quickly wrapped around the Scarlet Heaven sword. She didn't hesitate and slashed down. Crack! A straight hole suddenly appeared on the tightly locked door. Several cracks spread out. Everyone looked over in shock. A slim and slender figure stepped out from within. It was a youth with a delicate appearance who looked to be only 16 or 17 years old. At this moment, he was holding an extremely sharp longsword in his hand, and his entire body was surging with an astonishing aura. Between his brows, a biting cold fighting spirit flashed. It was as if he wanted to crush everything. Chu Yu! Elder Huafeng cried out in surprise, almost unable to believe his eyes. Who else could it be other than Chu Yu? Who else could it be? Hearing his voice, everyone present was shocked. Chu Yu? The one who went in before. He actually came out alive. And, you broke through. Because of the shock, Elder Huafeng's voice trembled. If he wasn't wrong, Chu Yu's current realm was clearly rank 9 warrior. Before he went in, wasn't he only at the early stage of rank 8? Now, why, after Chu Luiyue broke through the door, he realized that something was wrong and quickly looked around. With a glance, she had basically guessed the current situation. It seemed that the previous commotion had summoned all the first-rate clans that were wandering in the northern region of the primordial wilderness. Hearing the voice, she stared at Elder Huafeng. Her eyes flashed as she asked the question in her heart. Elder, how long has it been? Elder Huafeng immediately said. 3 days. It has been 3 days since you were locked in there. Only 3 days? Chu Luiyue narrowed his eyes. She had clearly spent a very long time inside. She even felt that several months had passed, or even a year. However, because she was focused on breaking through, she didn't notice how much time had passed. She didn't expect that the changes she experienced inside would only last for 3 short days outside. Seeing her expression, Elder Huafeng immediately understood something. It seemed that the flow of time inside was very different from outside. That was why Chu Yu broke through to become a rank 9 warrior in such a short period of time. But no matter what, it was best that she could come out safely. He opened his mouth and had a bunch of questions to ask, but when the words reached his mouth, he didn't know where to start. In the end, he only waved at Chu Luiyue. Brat, come back quickly. Did he know that during this period of time, they had been worried to death? Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes and moved, about to go over. Wait! Beside her, a low and powerful shout suddenly stopped Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue turned her gaze. The one who spoke was a middle-aged man with a strong figure. That face was very unfamiliar, but at this moment, there was obvious hostility on his face. He didn't come with good intentions. Chu Luiyue became vigilant. May I ask who senior is? Jean Di of the Golden Wing sect. He was full of energy and there was a hint of provocation. His eyes swept over the Scarlet Heaven sword in Chu Luiyue's hand and sneered with unknown meaning. It seems that this thing is quite handy for you. Chu Luiyue clenched the Scarlet Heaven sword, but her expression was calm. It was normal for the people of the Golden Wing sect to be hostile to her. Anyway, the Scarlet Heaven sword was now hers, and they couldn't take it back no matter what. You brat, your luck is good. Not only did you get a rare treasure, but you even tried to compete for other Chuyu. For the sake of Lingxiao College's face, I'll give you a chance. Immediately hand over everything you got there. That's not something you can take. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly, but found that the people next to her didn't refute, as if they agreed with these words. But she was inside, but with the help of the majestic power of heaven and earth, she broke through to the rank 9 warrior. How could she pay it back? Senior Jean D, please forgive this junior for being stupid, but I don't know what you are referring to. Although Chu Luiyue was puzzled in her heart, she was still very polite on the surface. With so many people present, she didn't want to cause trouble for no reason. Jean D sneered and his tone became impatient. What, you don't admit it? Chu Luiyue said calmly. If you don't make it clear, this junior really doesn't know what you mean. Jean D let out a, ha. You're still pretending to be crazy. What we want is naturally the Heavenly Square Sacred Cauldron. Chapter 1367. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Someone interrupted from the side, that's right. As long as you hand over the Heavenly Square Cauldron, everything else is negotiable. Chu Luiyue glanced at the person who spoke. She didn't know him, but he seemed to be an important figure of a first-class clan. Those who could come here were not ordinary people, so their words naturally carried a lot of weight. Chu Luiyue looked around calmly. Many people didn't speak. But this attitude showed that they were on the same side as Jean D. Seeing that Chu Luiyue didn't speak for a long time, Jean D only thought that she had obtained a treasure and was unwilling to give it up, so he continued, Chu you are still young, and there are some things that you can't touch. Even if you get it by luck, you may not be able to keep it. Keeping it in your hands will only cause trouble and bring trouble. So, it's better to hand it over. As for us, we will owe you a favor. How about it? Chu Luiyue suddenly understood. Do you all think that I got the Heavenly Square Cauldron from inside? No one answered. But everyone's expression clearly said, of course. Obviously, this was already their consensus. Not to mention that they had caused such a big commotion, they had all worked together to open the door, but they still couldn't open it. But Chu Yu alone had broken it with a single sword. How could this not make people suspicious? Seeing everyone's reaction, Chu Luiyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They were really imaginative. Although the Heavenly Square Cauldron was indeed with her, she didn't get it this time. Besides, they wanted her things just because they said so. Wasn't it too shameless of them to make it sound so dignified? Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly and said lightly, I'm sorry to disappoint everyone. This time, other than successfully breaking through to the 9th stage, I didn't get anything in there. As soon as her voice fell, the surroundings fell silent for a moment. Many people looked at each other and frowned, obviously not believing it. Nothing. How is this possible? Jean D's face became very cold, and a trace of killing intent flashed quickly. So you're saying that you're not willing to hand it over? Chu Luiyue smiled. I didn't get anything, so what do I have to offer? Everyone said that I obtained the Heavenly Square Cauldron from there. May I ask, do you have any evidence? She was inside, and they were outside. The door was locked the whole time. She did not believe that they had seen anything. Maybe the evidence is on you. As Jean D spoke, she suddenly tapped her toes and quickly rushed towards Chu Luiyue. Since you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, then don't blame us for being rude. Jean D. How dare you? Elder Hua Feng was shocked when he saw this and immediately rushed over. Chu Luiyue's figure flashed and disappeared on the spot. So fast. The onlookers were all shocked when they saw this. How is this the speed of a 9th stage warrior? This Chu Yu clearly has a problem. That's right. It was said that he was a rank 8 warrior before, but after a few days, He broke through and became a rank 9 warrior. If the heavenly square cauldron is not on him, where is it? What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and go. If you wait any longer, the treasures will be snatched away by the Golden Wing sect. Soon, people from all sides moved out. Everyone was in a mess. And their goal was Chu Luiyue. At this moment, a loud sound suddenly came from afar. Chu Luiyue looked up and a hint of shock flashed across her eyes. Between heaven and earth, there was only darkness. A transparent flame was burning crazily in midair. Within it, a completely transparent square cauldron was quietly suspended in the air. It was the heavenly square cauldron. Digression: tomorrow at 12 p.m. mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1368. All the colors and light between heaven and earth seemed to be occupied by that huge cauldron. A sacred and majestic aura spread out from it, causing one's heart to palpitate. The heavenly square cauldron. Someone suddenly cried out in alarm. Someone quickly turned around and ran in that direction. Jean D looked at Chu Luiyue suspiciously. So the huge commotion earlier really wasn't because of the appearance of the heavenly square cauldron? He sneered. Chu Yu, we're not done with this. After saying that, his figure flashed and he followed the crowd over there. Chu Yu, are you alright? Elder Hua Feng stepped forward and looked at her nervously. Chu Luiyue chuckled. Elder, don't worry. I'm fine. Elder Hua Feng then heaved a sigh of relief as he looked at Chu Luiyue with admiration. I didn't expect you to have such an opportunity. In just a few days, Chu Yu had broken through from a rank 8 warrior to a rank 9 warrior. If word got out, who knew how many people would be envious? Chu Luiyue raised her chin in that direction. Elder, everyone is going to fight for the heavenly square cauldron. You don't plan to go? That thing is a treasure, but our academy didn't come here for it. Moreover, so many people have gone. It's not that easy to get first place. It was inevitable that there would be another fierce battle. He only wanted to find Bo Yan and the others as soon as possible, as well as the hundreds of students in the academy. He was not interested in anything else. Chu Luiyue nodded. Then, the appearance of the heavenly square cauldron is a little strange. Let's wait and see. As she spoke, she glanced to the side and found that the group of people from Lingyun Mountain had already followed them. On the other hand, Shi Rui flew towards her. It's good that junior brother Chu Yu is fine. Hearing the conversation between the two, she seemed to heave a sigh of relief. The white-browed old man urged from behind. Second miss, we have to hurry up. If we delay any longer, the heavenly square cauldron will be snatched away by others. Unlike Lingxiao College, they had come for that treasure this time. Now that it had finally appeared before their eyes, how could they not fight for it? Shi Rui nodded at Elder Hua Feng and Chu Luiyue. Elder, Chu Yu, we will head over first. Senior sister. Chu Luiyue suddenly opened his mouth and advised. If such a saint artifact were to appear, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. However, that thing had appeared without a sound. It was a little strange. I think. Let's not be so anxious. Let's take a closer look first. Shi Rui was stunned. What you said makes sense. She came from a first-rate aristocratic family, so it wasn't as if she had never seen a saint artifact before. If one wanted to obtain a treasure of this level, it usually depended on one's luck. Even if he was the first to rush over, he might not be able to gain the recognition of this treasure. Needless to say, there were already so many people rushing over. She hesitated for a moment before nodding. Then let's go over and see what's going on. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat as he gently nodded. It just so happened that she also wanted to see what it was. Second young mistress, the white-browed old man frowned as if he wanted to persuade her again. Shi Rui shook her head at him. The white-browed old man finally swallowed the rest of his words and looked at Chu Luiyue in confusion. He did not know where this young man came from. The second young mistress seemed to have always valued him. Even at such a juncture, she still chose to accept his opinion. He suppressed the doubts in his heart and followed Sher Roy, and the others forward. Since ancient times, there has only been one heavenly square cauldron. The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice sounded in a deep voice. The one in front must be a fake. Chu Luiyue nodded imperceptibly. But that aura is indeed very similar to the real heavenly square cauldron. If the real thing was not in her hands, she would have been deceived by the scene in front of her. Even she had almost mistaken it, let alone the others. The legendary three-eyed eagle's tone was disdainful. A fake is a fake. It will never become real. As they spoke, Chu Luiyue and the others had arrived and finally stopped about 300 feet away from the heavenly square cauldron. The group of people who had arrived first were even closer and had already surrounded the huge transparent square cauldron. No one knew whether it was because of the shocking pressure or because they were afraid of the other opponents present, but after they arrived, no one took the initiative to make the first move. It was silent. Only their shining eyes, which were filled with excitement and greed, revealed their thoughts completely. Chu Luiyue looked over. A ball of flame was burning in the air, hot and passionate. The huge transparent square cauldron floated quietly in the air. From the outside, it was exactly the same as the one in her body. Even the engravings on it were exactly the same. Except for one thing, the aura was not right. She did not feel it before, but now that she was in front of it, she immediately realized that this thing was indeed very fake. No matter how similar it was on the outside, the inside was different. In the end, it could not be compared. Unfortunately, those who had not seen the real heavenly square cauldron could not tell at all. Chu Luiyue looked around and quickly found a deep hole in the ground under the transparent square cauldron. The thick snow had melted, and even the ground had been lifted. The dark edge of the deep hole faintly emitted a burnt smell. It looked as if it had suddenly rushed out from the ground. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes and fell into deep thought. This thing was obviously designed by someone in advance. But she did not know what the other party's purpose was. Suddenly, the transparent square cauldron in the air started to spin. Everyone was on guard. Then, the transparent flames suddenly burst. Boom! A terrifying heat wave spread in all directions. Chu Luiyue did not directly confront it. Instead, she chose to retreat. However, at this moment, a cry of pain suddenly sounded in her ears. She quickly turned her head and saw that one of Sher Roy's shoulders had been hit by a flaming whip. Blood and flesh flew. Swoosh! A black figure appeared in front of her and firmly protected her. It was her contracted magical beast, the legendary three-eyed eagle. However, the appearance of the legendary three-eyed eagle did not allow Sher Roy to escape safely. Instead, it attracted a bigger disaster. Because after it appeared, the transparent square cauldron suddenly rushed in the direction of Sher Roy. The raging flames burned wildly and instantly transformed into two flaming whips. They surrounded Sher Roy from both sides and easily trapped her. Everyone was shocked by this scene. Did this heavenly square cauldron choose Sher Roy? But in the next moment, their guesses were shattered. Because the transparent flame around them had already attacked Sher Roy mercilessly. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1369. Sher Roy was completely dumbfounded. She had indeed come here for the heavenly square cauldron. However, she hadn't expected that she would be targeted by it for no reason. At first, she thought that she had been chosen by the heavenly square cauldron. However, the intense pain soon made her sober up. This thing clearly wanted to take her life. After she came back to her senses, she frantically retreated. She wanted to get rid of it. However, how could it be so easy? In just a few breaths' time, several different degrees of burns had appeared on her body. Second miss. When the people of the meteor sect saw this, they also realized that they were in danger. They quickly rushed forward. They wanted to rescue Sher Roy. However, that transparent flame was burning crazily. They couldn't even get close to it. How could they do anything else? Screech. The legendary three-eyed eagle spread its wings and blocked in front of Sher Royer. However, that transparent flame condensed into a flaming whip and quickly flung it away. Then, it rushed toward Sher Royer at an even faster speed. Chu Luiyue tightly knitted her brows. Sher Royer hadn't done anything out of line. So, why was she being targeted like this? Chu Luiyue was about to go forward to help when she suddenly heard a strange sound coming from below. She lowered her head and her pupils suddenly shrank. She saw that something was coming out of that messy pit. It was a black tree root. It was as thick as a baby's arm. However, it contained an astonishingly vigorous aura. It drilled out from below and started to spread along the ground. The snow on the ground melted quickly wherever it passed. Some of the snow water was absorbed by it. Some of it seeped into the ground. It started to grow at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then, a second and a third root appeared. A tree started to grow out of it. Everything in the surroundings started to change rapidly. That tree was very strange. It only had roots and branches. It was completely black and didn't have a single leaf. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would have thought that it was just an object carved out of black jade. However, Chu Luiyue suddenly felt a faint familiar aura. She stared at that tree. She felt that she had seen it somewhere before. In a short time, that tree had become as tall as an ordinary tree. However, it did not stop there. Instead, it continued. The branches were growing and the roots were spreading. Wherever it passed, the snow melted, and it was as warm as spring. Everything was too strange. The onlookers couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression and step back one after another. Ah! Sher Royer fell to the ground and cried out in pain. Chu Luiyue looked over and saw that Sher Royer was covered in wounds and blood. She was in a very sorry state. She was surrounded by the transparent flames. No matter how hard she struggled, she was still unable to extinguish the flames. She could only endure the immense pain. The white-browed elder and the others were burning with anxiety, but they could not step forward to help. That transparent square cauldron clearly wanted her life. What's wrong with Sher Royer? He was being hunted down by the heavenly square cauldron. Everyone was puzzled. Chu Luiyue was about to step forward when he caught a glimpse of a purple gold light from the corner of his eyes. Her heart skipped a beat, and she followed his gaze. Unknowingly, a small leaf had grown out of the black wood. The leaf was purple gold in color. It was as thin as a cicada's wing and as clear as jade. Under the sunlight, it reflected a faint glow. This was a purple gold Bodhi leaf. Chu Luiyue couldn't be more familiar with this thing. She had spent a lot of effort to get that purple gold Bodhi leaf back then. She didn't expect to see it here. Since it had grown such a leaf, then this tree, an absurd and crazy thought flashed through Chu Luiyue's mind. This was the legendary purple gold Bodhi tree. The purple gold Bodhi tree usually grew in extreme places. It was the divine tree of the legendary three-eyed eagle clan. Since it had appeared here, it proved that the legendary three-eyed eagle clan should be nearby too. Chu Luiyue quickly looked around. It was empty. There was not a single trace of the legendary three-eyed eagle. However, her heart still felt like it was being squeezed tightly by something. Although they didn't appear now, it didn't mean that they weren't here. She suddenly thought of something and asked in her heart. Did the legendary three-eyed eagle clan know that you were imprisoned in the heavenly square cauldron? After a short silence, a low and cold voice finally sounded. I don't know. When it was in trouble, everything happened too suddenly. It didn't have time to tell its clan what had happened. For the next 1,000 years, it was trapped in the heavenly square cauldron and suppressed underground. It was completely cut off from its clan. Therefore, it wasn't sure if its clan knew about it. However, this tree is indeed the divine tree of our clan. There should be other legendary three-eyed eagles nearby. Whoosh! Before it could finish its words, several legendary three-eyed eagles suddenly flew out from the purple gold Bodhi tree. Black phantoms covered the sky and instantly shrouded the entire sky. Fierce and cold killing intent rushed toward them. Immediately, they flew toward Shirui. It seemed like they were going to take her life. When the people of the meteor sect saw this, although they were frightened, they could only brace themselves. Elder Hua Feng's heart also beat rapidly. Quick! Save Rui. The people of the meteor sect weren't a match for those legendary three-eyed eagles. However, when the elders were about to step forward, a dissuading voice suddenly sounded from behind. Elder, please reconsider. Elder Hua Feng turned around with a cold face. Jiang Ji1, now is not the time for you to interfere. You. Elder, I'm doing this for everyone's sake. Jiang Ji1 hurriedly stepped forward and said quickly, the legendary three-eyed eagles are very arrogant. The legendary three-eyed eagle is proud and almost never signs contracts with humans. The reason why they are targeting senior sister Shirui, is because she forced herself to make a contract with that legendary three-eyed eagle. Have you forgotten how that legendary three-eyed eagle came to be? Shirui had said before that her father had spent a lot of effort to catch it. Moreover, that legendary three-eyed eagle was still underage at that time. After raising it for a long time, it finally made a contract with Shirui. This was undoubtedly a great humiliation to the legendary three-eyed eagle clan. Of course, they wouldn't let go of Shirui. If we go and help now, we won't be able to defeat these legendary three-eyed eagles. We might even anger them and make the situation worse. Elder Hua Feng's expression changed. Then what do you want to do? Jiang Ji1 took a deep breath and quickly glanced at Shirui, who was on the verge of dying. In my opinion, the one who tied the bell should untie it. The only thing we can do now is to let senior sister Shirui, break the contract with the legendary three-eyed eagle and try to make peace with it. Once a human and a magical beast form a contract, the contract can't be broken unless the magical beast dies. Your method won't work. Elder Hua Feng quickly rejected. Jiang Ji1's eyes flashed slightly. Elder, you clearly know that this will work. As long as senior sister Shirui, is willing to destroy her pearl of essence, won't it work? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1370. Elder Hua Feng's expression changed. There were actually many people who knew about this method, but almost no one would use it. This was because the damage to the cultivator was too great. If the pill of essence was destroyed, all the cultivation would be gone overnight. Who could accept this? This is impossible. Elder Hua Feng immediately shouted in a low voice, and his eyes were filled with warning as he looked at Jiang Ji1. Jiang Ji1, even if you have resentment towards Shirui, she is still your senior sister. Moreover, when you were besieged by the nine-tailed black crows, she even helped you. You. Take care of yourself. It was obvious what Jiang Ji1 was thinking. Seeing that her thoughts had been guessed, Jiang Ji1 didn't panic and only smiled bitterly. Elder, you have really misunderstood me. Actually, it's not just me. Senior sister Shirui, definitely knows about this method. In this situation, if she doesn't do this, I'm afraid she will. Only death awaited him. It was already like this, what else could she do? She could only blame herself for being too lucky to have contracted with the legendary three-eyed eagle. The heavenly Tao's reincarnation. Why didn't she think that this day would come when she was arrogant and glorious? Jiang Ji1 was very happy in her heart. Now, Shirui, only had two choices. The first was to fight to the end, and in the end, all the people of the meteor sect would be killed by the legendary three-eyed eagle. The second was to destroy her own pill of essence, break the contract with the legendary three-eyed eagle, and become a cripple from then on. No matter which one it was actually a dead end for Shirui. Looking at Shirui, who was almost completely surrounded by the legendary three-eyed eagles, Jiang Ji1 felt a burst of joy in her heart. Originally, she was still thinking of ways to destroy her prestige, but she didn't expect that she didn't even need to do anything. Let's see how she can put on a high and mighty face in the future. Elder Hua Feng frowned, and his heart was incomparably tangled. In fact, they didn't have enough manpower, not to mention that Dan Qing and the others were injured and couldn't help at all. If they really fell out with these legendary three-eyed eagles, then Shi Ruier fell to the ground, his heart filled with unprecedented despair. She had suffered quite a few injuries and was stained with blood. The snow beneath her had already melted and her clothes were soaked in the icy cold water. Her body was surrounded by a transparent flame that was scorching hot. Heat and cold intertwined, almost taking away half of her life. The sound of something breaking through the air was heard. She looked back. In front of him was the heavenly square cauldron, behind him was the legendary three-eyed eagle. The people of the meteor sect couldn't get close to her. Even her contracted three-eyed eagle had been restrained by the other two three-eyed eagles. She had nowhere to retreat. A biting cold aura rapidly approached. Shi Ruiyer's lips moved slightly as a bitter smile appeared on her face. Looks like I'm really going to fall here this time. However, in the next moment, she suddenly felt something and opened her eyes. It was a slender figure that appeared in front of her. Shi Ruiyer's heart skipped a beat. Chu Yu. You, senior sister, don't be impatient. Chu Luiyue raised his hand and waved his sword. The surrounding transparent flames that were burning crazily were quickly swallowed by the sword. The flames surged up the sword and finally disappeared into Chu Luiyue's palm. However, in the eyes of outsiders, the flames were all taken care of by the sword. They wouldn't suspect Chu Luiyue. His series of actions were as smooth as flowing water. Before the crowd could react, they saw the youth had already swallowed the surrounding flames with his sword. You overestimate yourself. A mocking voice came from the crowd. If you want to be a hero, you should see if you have the ability to do so. You're just a 9th stage warrior, and you think you're something? Just wait and see. The heavenly square cauldron and the legendary three-eyed eagle are not to be trifled with. Many people looked at Chu Luiyue with eyes full of ridicule and ridicule. Shi Ruier suddenly regained her senses and hurriedly said, Chu Yu. Leave quickly. If he was implicated because of this, she wouldn't be able to get over it no matter what. Before she finished speaking, the heavenly square cauldron had already thrown out another flaming whip. It went straight for Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue raised his eyes slightly and glanced at the heavenly square cauldron that was about to hit him. In the next moment, the flames suddenly stopped an inch in front of Chu Luiyue. The scene seemed to be frozen, and it was filled with an indescribable sense of strangeness. Chu Luiyue raised his hand impatiently, and the vigorous force in his palm quickly transformed into a scarlet flame. Faint specks of gold could be seen within it, but they were covered by the scarlet flame and were almost impossible to distinguish. Swish! The scarlet flame also transformed into a flaming whip and lashed out fiercely. Pa! A crisp sound was heard. The transparent flame instantly dissipated. Even the heavenly square cauldron behind it shook. Everyone was dumbfounded. What? What's going on? When did Chu Yu become so strong? The heavenly square cauldron had chased after Shi Ruier to such an extent. Why did it suddenly cower now? Chu Luiyue had already turned around and looked at the dozens of three-eyed eagles that were flying over quickly. The leader was staring at her with an ice-cold expression. Both sides were in a stalemate. In a short period of time, many leaves had grown on the purple-gold Bodhi tree. Pieces of purple-gold light flickered, almost dazzling. It grew taller and taller, and the canopy of the tree overturned the sky. Below, where the roots of the tree spread, the snow melted, revealing a fertile, brownish-black land full of vitality. The surrounding temperature seemed to be gradually rising. Elder Hua Feng's heart seemed to be tightly gripped by something, and he didn't even dare to breathe loudly. An elder behind him couldn't help but ask in a low voice. Hua Feng, should we go over and help? Chu Yu couldn't do it by himself, right? Although he had broken through to the 9th stage, the three-eyed eagles were all divine beasts. How could he be a match for them? Elder Huafeng swallowed his saliva with difficulty. Wait a moment. It wasn't that he didn't want to help, but he knew Chu Yu too well. If he wasn't confident, this kid would definitely not rush forward. The three-eyed eagles were powerful, but Chu Yu had a top-notch trump card. Now, it all depended on how he would choose to play. Hearing Elder Huafeng's words, although the others were worried, they could only hold back. Jiang Jiwan sneered in her heart. These people thought too highly of Chu Yu. Even if he had the help of the red-tailed phoenix, how could he deal with so many three-eyed eagles? He was really crazy about being in the limelight. But this was also good. It would be best if he and Shi Rui were completely dealt with. Chu Luiyue took a step forward. Shi Rui opened her mouth. Chu Yu, everyone turned to look at him. The leading three-eyed eagle's eyes were like knives as it scraped past Chu Luiyue's body. Suddenly, Chu Luiyue's figure flashed and actually rushed towards the purple-gold Bodhi tree on the other side. Screech! Deep hatred erupted from the eyes of the three-eyed eagle as it headed straight for Chu Luiyue. The other three-eyed eagles also quickly followed. Digression, mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1371. Chu Luiyue was extremely fast. In just a few breaths, she had already arrived under the purplish gold Bodhi tree. She looked up. The dazzling leaves swayed with the wind, shining brightly. Invisible and subtle air currents surged in the surroundings, exuding an astonishingly vigorous aura. The purplish gold Bodhi leaf was an extremely rare treasure even in the divine ruins world. Now that a purplish gold Bodhi tree had appeared, it was even more precious. If not for the appearance of the heavenly square cauldron and the many legendary three-eyed eagles, everyone would definitely not be as calm as they were now when they saw this tree. Of course, there was another reason why they did not move. Attacking the purplish gold Bodhi tree in front of the legendary three-eyed eagles, wasn't that courting death? Chu Luiyue stood under the tree and looked back. Several legendary three-eyed eagles had already followed over and surrounded her. Chu Luiyue could clearly feel the burning hatred in their eyes. She raised her brows slightly. This hatred came a little too suddenly. Even though she had helped Shi Rui, they should not have such a reaction. Then, was it because of something else? Could it be because of the fake heavenly square cauldron? Just as this thought flashed through her mind, the leading legendary three-eyed eagle suddenly flapped its wings. At the same time, it let out a sharp screech. Bang! A crisp shattering sound was heard. The transparent square cauldron floating in mid-air not far away had suddenly exploded. Everyone was stunned on the spot. Then, they saw the fragments of the transparent square cauldron rapidly disintegrate. Light flickered, and in the end, only a transparent flame was left. Whoosh! That ball of flame was flying towards them at lightning speed. In the end, it was directly swallowed by the leading legendary three-eyed eagle. Chu Luiyue's eyes flashed slightly. So that was it, that flame was indeed the karmic fire within the heavenly square cauldron. She did not know what method these legendary three-eyed eagles used to extract this flame and preserve it until now. From the looks of it, they even directly controlled it and turned it into their own power. They used this flame to transform into the heavenly square cauldron and lure everyone over. Their purpose was to find the real person who owned the heavenly square cauldron. They should have realized this when she scattered the flames of the fake heavenly square cauldron. That should be where the hatred that filled his heart came from. Chu Luiyue gently placed his hand on the tree trunk. An aura poured into it. He sure is leisurely. The onlookers were not optimistic about this and could not help but discuss in low voices. The purple gold Bodhi tree is the divine tree of the godly three-eyed eagle clan. How can it be tainted by others? I think Chu Yu has really gone overboard. He thinks that he can do whatever he wants just because he has broken through to stage 9. Little does he know that there are tens of millions of experts in this world, and many of them are existences that he cannot afford to provoke. I heard that Chu Yu contracted a red-tailed red phoenix. That's probably why he's so confident, right? So what? The red-tailed red phoenix and the divine three-eyed eagle had always minded their own business, but if they were to really fight, they would be outnumbered. Chu Yu did not have any advantage. The legendary three-eyed eagle standing at the very front suddenly flew up. It went straight for Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue closed his eyes. The purple gold Bodhi tree was lush with leaves. A gentle breeze blew, and the leaves danced with it. The voice beside Chu Luiyue's ears suddenly faded away, and everything became quiet and peaceful. Countless pairs of eyes looked over. Its sharp beak looked like it was about to peck Chu Luiyue's face. Elder Hua Feng's hands were tightly clenched into a ball, and his heart almost jumped out of his chest. A trace of despair flashed across Shi Rui's eyes. She looked at this scene in a daze, and 2 lines of clear tears flowed down from the corners of her eyes. The corners of Jiang Jiwan's mouth slowly curled up into a cold smile. However, at this moment, the purple gold Bodhi tree swayed gently. Crash, the branches and leaves rustled. Resplendent light flickered. The three-eyed eagle suddenly stopped in front of Chu Luiyue. After a short pause, it stared at Chu Luiyue's eyes, which were filled with resentment, shock, and disbelief. In the end, it changed into fanatical joy. It folded its wings, and landed in front of Chu Luiyue. It seemed as if it was about to bow its head and salute her. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes. A gust of wind blew, and the branches and leaves gradually stopped swaying. The three-eyed eagle's movements paused, and a wisp of understanding streaked across its eyes. Then, it took a step back, and raised its head to the sky, crying out. Chu Luiyue suddenly felt that the purple gold Bodhi tree next to her shook. She raised her head, and looked over. Countless purple gold Bodhi leaves flew out. They flew in the air, and connected with each other. It seemed as if they were about to form a huge barrier. Quickly retreat. It was Unknown who cried out in alarm. The crowd, which had been quiet for a long time, finally became restless. All the people retreated one after another. The meteor sex people reacted quickly, and immediately stepped forward to support Shi Rui and take her away. No. Chu Yu is still there. Shi Rui struggled, and wanted to go back. The white-browed old man said in a deep voice. You guys take the second miss away first. I'll think of a way to save Chu Yu. With Shi Rui's current situation, she wouldn't be of any help even if she stayed behind. She might even drag them down. Shi Rui quickly understood this point, and swallowed her saliva with difficulty. She had no choice but to swallow the rest of her words. Then, she anxiously looked at the youth who was standing quietly under the purple gold Bodhi tree. In the end, Elder Hua Feng's figure flashed, and he rushed over. However, the speed at which the barrier was condensing was faster than he had expected. Before he could get close to Chu Luiyue, a purple gold barrier had already appeared in front of him. A powerful oppressive aura came crashing down on him. Elder Hua Feng didn't even have time to come in contact with the barrier, and his body was already sent flying. Everyone was either actively or passively forced back and scattered in all directions. They looked at the scene in front of them in shock. A dazzling purple gold barrier enveloped everything in its path. It had also isolated everything. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1372. The barrier spread out, isolating the area from the outside world. But the miraculous thing was that sunlight could still seep in, so the surrounding scenery looked no different from before. Oh, no. There were some changes. The purplish gold Bodhi tree's influence had basically transformed into something else. At a glance, it was as warm as spring and full of vitality. Chu Luiyue let go of her hand and looked forward. The three-eyed eagle standing at the front couldn't hide the excitement in its eyes. Chu Luiyue chuckled. Zi Chen, come out and meet your tribesmen. A huge purple gold barrier stood out above the snowfield. Everyone wanted to go in and see what was going on, but most of them were afraid. There were so many three-eyed eagles. They might not be a match for them. Besides, even the purple gold Bodhi tree was here. Who knew if there were other three-eyed eagles? So this is their nest, an elder couldn't help but mutter. No wonder the three-eyed eagles haven't appeared in the past 1,000 years. After all this time, they're all in the wilderness north. Moreover, they're hiding so well. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have dared to believe what had happened. The white-browed elder was swept out. He walked to Sher Roy, with a face full of guilt. Second young mistress, this old man is incompetent. Sher Roy, coughed and spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. Her face turned paler. No. It's not your fault. It's all my fault. If it wasn't to save her, Chuyu wouldn't have provoked those three-eyed eagles. He wouldn't have been trapped inside. How could he be a match for them alone? The white-browed elder thought for a moment and frowned. Second young mistress, actually, this old man feels that those three-eyed eagles don't seem to have any intention of harming Chuyu. At first, they were indeed full of murderous intent as they went straight for Chuyu. But later on, for some reason, their attitude seemed to have changed. Otherwise, they wouldn't have stopped attacking at the last moment. Sher Roy, naturally saw this as well. However, one could never be too careful. No matter what, Chuyu was trying to help her. If something really happened, then don't worry. Strangely, Elder Hua Feng seemed to be relieved. He will be safe. With the crimson gold heavenly phoenix, no matter how many legendary three-eyed eagles came, it shouldn't be a problem, right? At the same time, in a dungeon in the north of the untainted land, the dark and cramped space was filled with a nauseating stench of blood. A thin man leaned against the cold wall. His hands and feet were chained, and his range of movement was limited to 5 steps around him. His originally pretty face was now deeply sunken. His cheekbones were protruding, and his face was haggard. There were even a few cracks on his pale lips. With a slight movement, dark red blood seeped out. His eyes were closed, and his breathing was weak, as if he would pass out at any moment. Mu Qinghe. A hoarse and deep voice came from the front. Mu Qinghe's eyelids moved, and he opened his eyes with great difficulty. When he saw the huge bronze mirror in front of him, a trace of awe and anxiety flashed across his eyes. He immediately got up and knelt down with great difficulty. Master, it seems that you haven't been doing well during this period of time. The voice seemed to be mocking, but it still made him shudder. Shangguan, you didn't seem to do anything to you. How did you become like this? Mu Qinghe's head was on the ground. I'm incompetent. I'm afraid I don't have much time left. I can't serve you, the voice laughed. You've been with her for so many years. Don't you have any nostalgia? Oh right, she's also in the north of the untainted land. Why don't you meet her? Mu Qinghe's heart skipped a beat. Digression, I'm dizzy from hunger. I'm going to look for food. Tomorrow at 12:00. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1373. He knelt on the ground and did not get up for a long time. His voice was weak and dull. She already knows that I betrayed her. There should be no need to see her again, right? What can I say if I see her? No one in this world will continue to believe in someone who once betrayed them. Moreover, the things he had done back then were enough to put her to death. That's not necessarily true. The voice laughed and said ambiguously. It's because she already knows that you betrayed her, but she still chose to spare your life. This is more interesting, isn't it? She brought you up personally. Perhaps, she still can't bear to let you go? Mu Qinghe knelt on the ground and fell into silence. His body was stiff and cold. He closed his eyes, concealing all the emotions in his eyes. The surrounding air seemed to freeze inch by inch. There are too many people here this time. It's a mess. When it's quieter, I'll invite her over. If I remember correctly, the two of you haven't seen each other for a long time, right? After all, you're master and servant. It's only right for you to catch up. Don't forget, that thing is still with her. Mu Qinghe's pale lips trembled. Finally, he spat out a few words with difficulty. I'll do as you say. A chilling laugh rang out, but it quickly dissipated. After a long time, Mu Qinghe finally straightened up. The huge bronze mirror not far in front of him had already lost all of its blood-red color. Only the edges of the mirror were tinged with a faint dark red. The surroundings were dark, empty, and silent. Mu Qinghe stood up slowly. His face was half bright and half dark. It was hard to see clearly. This unfilial descendant greets the ancestor. Inside the barrier, the many legendary three-eyed eagles gathered together and bowed respectfully to Zichen. They could not hide their excitement. Although Zichen looked calm on the surface, Chu Luiyue and his aura were connected. Naturally, he could clearly feel the ups and downs in his heart. After being trapped for 1,000 years, how could he not be emotional when he finally saw his clansmen? You may dispense with the formalities. Is everything going well in the clan? Zichen calmed down and finally spoke. As his voice fell, the expressions of the legendary three-eyed eagles on the opposite side became a little strange. The leader revealed a helpless expression. Ancestor, to be honest, the situation in the clan is really not good. Zichen's heart sank. Back then, after you suddenly disappeared, there were people who wantonly besieged us. After a bitter battle, more than half of the clansmen died. In the end, in order to preserve their bloodline, everyone left their original place. After many twists and turns, they arrived at this place. There has been no news of you all these years. We all thought that someone had used the heavenly square sacred cauldron. The leader of the three godly eagles glanced at Chu Luiyue as he spoke. Zichen looked indifferent. Just go on. Yes. When you disappeared all those years ago, you left behind a clump of heavenly square cauldron's karmic fire. We've been using this as a clue to search for you, but unfortunately, we haven't been able to find anything even after so many years. It wasn't until this time that we realized that the thing was actually. There was a brief silence. Several legendary three-eyed eagles couldn't help but look at Chu Luiyue again. If they hadn't sensed wrongly, the heavenly square cauldron seemed to be on this person. So this time, you've deliberately set up a trap to lure the person who really has the heavenly square cauldron and find a way to capture her? Chu Luiyue asked with a faint smile. That's right. These legendary three-eyed eagles were honest and admitted it directly. That's why we sensed that the thing was on you, so, the leader of the three godly eagles glanced at Zichen uneasily as he spoke. They could all see that the relationship between their ancestor and this young man was not ordinary. Back then, it was rumored that Taizu was killed by someone using the heavenly square cauldron, so they had always been very hostile to the person who had the heavenly square cauldron. But now, it seemed that something was wrong. The heavenly square cauldron has indeed recognized her as its master, but what happened back then had nothing to do with her. Zichen knew that they had misunderstood, so he explained directly. To be precise, if it wasn't for her, I might have been completely annihilated by now. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Luiyue immediately felt many eager gazes fall on her. I see. Young Master Chu, sorry for the disrespect. Their attitude changed drastically. Saving Zichen was a great favor to their entire tribe, so they naturally had to express their gratitude. Chu Luiyue coughed. You're welcome. In fact, she didn't lose anything. After all, Zichen had become her contracted divine beast. It's a long story. I'll explain it to you in detail when I have time. As Zichen spoke, he looked at the leader of the three godly eagles. Did you decide to do this on your own, or do you have other plans? Did you spread the news that the heavenly square cauldron has appeared here? Chu Luiyue's eyes narrowed. This was one of the truths that she wanted to know the most. The leader of the three godly eagles shook his head. Actually, someone came to us and said that he would help us find the person who had the heavenly square cauldron, so we agreed. What happened after that was basically done by the other party, and we just waited here quietly. Zichen and Chu Luiyue looked at each other. Who is that person? We don't know him either. When he appeared, he didn't show his true appearance, and even his figure and appearance were different. But he shouldn't be an ordinary person. This was natural. Being able to find the 3 godly eagles and persuade them to work together was enough to explain a lot of things. Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment. Zichen, who knows about the dispute between the 3 godly eagles and the heavenly square cauldron? Zichen narrowed his eyes and shook his head. I thought that only our tribe knew, but it seems that's not the case. Could it be the people who harmed you back then? Or those who besieged the 3 godly eagles after you died? Zichen was stunned, and a hint of complicated emotions flashed across his eyes. It's not impossible. It's just that thousands of years have passed, and now I don't know where they are or how they appear in the world. Anything could happen in such a long period of time. Chu Luiyue crossed her arms and gently rubbed her chin with a faint smile. The other party seems to be coming for me. Using the heavenly square cauldron as bait, of course, he was fishing for her. But now she wasn't sure if the other party knew that the heavenly square cauldron was with her. After pondering for a moment, she looked up and asked, "Can you still contact those people now?" The 3 godly eagles shook their heads. They are very cautious, and they always take the initiative to contact us. And they will quickly destroy all clues and evidence afterward. We also tried to track them, but it was all in vain. The other party is very cunning. However, one thing is certain, the other party is also in the northern region of the Great Desolate Land. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 1374. Chu Luiyue frowned. The weather in the northern part of the Eldritch Wilderness is harsh and the environment is extreme. Almost no one can stay here for a long time. Besides, in the vast snowfield, even if there are people. Suddenly, her voice paused. Of course, it was conspicuous in the snowfield, but what if it was underground? The area here was vast and boundless. Who knew what was hidden underground? She still hadn't forgotten about the valley and the tombstone that was hidden underground. Thinking of this, she was curious and could not help but ask, "By the way, do you know who died here and set up a tomb and tombstone?" The expression of the leading 3-eyed eagle changed slightly. This, 1,000 years ago, there was indeed a great battle here. If you are talking about the person who guarded the tomb with 9 dragon skeletons, it should be right. Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched. 9, guarding? Yes. Back then, that expert fought fiercely with the dragon clan here and finally died. However, when he died, he also dragged 9 dragons to the grave with him. After death, he still used his remaining strength to suppress them here, so that they could not break free. Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. The dragon clan has rarely interacted with the human clan. What did that person do to be besieged like this? We don't know about this, but I heard that it has something to do with the corpse of a great phoenix dragon. Chu Luiyue's heart seemed to have been hit by something. She suddenly looked up with a shocked expression. What? The 3-eyed eagle thought that she had such a reaction because she heard the great phoenix dragon. After all, it was one of the 2 ancient divine beasts. It was normal for her to be so shocked. It explained patiently, "We don't know the details, so we can only guess." Back then, that expert accidentally obtained the corpse of a great phoenix dragon in the northern part of the Eldritch Wilderness. Before he could do anything, he was discovered by the dragon clan and attacked together. That was why the great battle broke out. Unfortunately, the dragon clan underestimated that expert's strength. Even with the combined strength of the 9 dragons, they were still no match for him. In the end, both sides died. Of course, from the looks of the current situation, that expert is still a level higher. Even if I were to die, I would have to trap these dragon race beings here. Countless thoughts flashed through Chu Luiyue's mind. The corpse of the great phoenix dragon. She had seen it before. Furthermore, 2 of the wing bones were in Zichen's body. Wasn't it buried in the Tianling god realm in Taizu? How could this be? Was it a coincidence, or Chu Luiyue lowered his eyes, but his heart was pounding. The ancient divine beast, the great phoenix dragon, was already a rare sight. The possibility of two corpses appearing was really not high. Furthermore, Taizu had indeed said that he had been here before. Could it be? Absurd and bold ideas kept flashing in Chu Luiyue's mind. She took a deep breath and asked calmly, since everyone knows that these dragon bones are trapped here, then, why hasn't the dragon race done anything? Rumor has it that they wouldn't allow the bones of their clansmen to be left outside, right? That's true, but it depends on the situation. These 9 dragon bones have been trapped here for thousands of years. It's not like the dragon race hasn't come here and tried to take them away, but they all failed. In the end, they simply stopped coming. However, from this, it could be seen that the expert back then was indeed very powerful. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so powerful after death. Chu Luiyue's mind was in a mess. She began to call out to Taizu in her heart. However, Taizu seemed to be still in a deep sleep and didn't give her any response. Ziqin noticed that Chu Luiyue's expression was a little strange. He thought of the wing bones in his body and guessed something. Do you want to go back and take a look? Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment. Okay. Time passed slowly. The sky gradually darkened. Between heaven and earth, only the faint purple-gold barrier was exceptionally eye-catching. It's been so long, why is there still no movement at all? I wonder how Chu Yu is now. They're inside, and we're outside. Even if something really happens, we won't be able to see it. Let's just wait. I heard that Chu Yu has contracted a red-tailed phoenix. Maybe he can really turn the situation around. I feel that after he was locked in that door, he broke through to the 9th stage in just a few days. It's even more shocking. Such an opportunity is something that others can't even ask for. Fortunately, the heavenly square sacred cauldron didn't fall into his hands. However, that item seems to belong to the three-eyed eagle now. The news that was spread before didn't mention this. I'm afraid we have to investigate this matter carefully. Everyone was discussing animatedly, and many people began to suspect the heavenly square sacred cauldron. Those present were all important existences in the divine ruins world, so they naturally weren't brainless. Now that things had already happened, it wasn't difficult to detect the problem with just a little thought. Now, they all planned to wait for Chu Yu to come out before making a decision. On the other hand, Lingxiao College was silent. Chu Yu and the others were naturally the most worried about them. Jiang Jiwan stood in an inconspicuous corner behind the crowd, treating her wounds alone. Ignoring the other injuries for the time being, the most serious one was the burn on her arm. Although she had already applied medicine before, it had been such a long time that she should have changed the dressing long ago. However, they had been running back and forth, so they didn't have the time or energy to do this. She slowly removed the gauze, and the wound had already festered. With a gentle tug, it implicated a piece of flesh. Her face was pale from the pain, but she could only grit her teeth and continue. Shi Rui, who was at the side, inadvertently saw this scene, and a trace of ridicule flashed across her eyes. Because Elder Danqing had publicly severed his master-disciple relationship with Jiang Jiwan, the people of Lingxiao College's attitude towards Jiang Jiwan was much worse than before. This wasn't because everyone was flattering the strong and stepping on the weak, but Elder Danqing had always loved this disciple of his. Now that he had suddenly become like this, it was obvious that Jiang Jiwan had done something wrong. He left Jiang Jiwan with the last bit of dignity and didn't expose her in public. However, everyone wasn't stupid, and their attitude towards Jiang Jiwan naturally wasn't any better. So now, no one was even helping her treat her wounds. Moreover, she had already lost most of her things before, and now she didn't even have any useful medicine. She could only reluctantly ask for some medicine from the other elders and apply it on her own. It could be said that she was miserable. You reap what you sow. The white-browed elder followed Shi Rui's gaze and sneered. His voice wasn't loud or soft, but it was enough for Jiang Jiwan to hear clearly. Jiang Jiwan was distracted for a moment and didn't control the strength in her hands well. She directly tore off a large piece of flesh that was stuck to her wound, and it was so painful that her face turned pale. However, no one cared, as if she wasn't here at all. Jiang Ji-won bit her lip. She couldn't go on like this. If something really happened, she would definitely be abandoned by everyone immediately. Suddenly, her eyes lit up and she looked back. Chuyu had already come out just now, so, that door should still be open, right? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1375. At that time, everyone's attention was taken away by the sudden appearance of the heavenly square cauldron, but almost no one remembered that the place Chuyu had gone to was also a good place. Otherwise, how could he have broken through from a rank 8 warrior to a rank 9 warrior in just a few days? The heavenly square cauldron was indeed a treasure, but in the end, only one person could obtain it. Not to mention, there was still the troublesome three-eyed eagle clan. Rather than waiting here for an illusory opportunity, it was better to find another way. Perhaps, she could also obtain some kind of opportunity from this? Thinking of this, Jiang Ji-won had made up her mind. Anyway, these people no longer cared about her and were even full of disgust, so what else did she have to worry about? As long as Elder Dan Qing was still here, she could not stand out. She might as well cut off all means of retreat. As she carefully and slowly bandaged her wounds, she looked around quietly. The sky had already darkened, and the surrounding scenery was gradually blurred. Everyone was staring at the barrier and didn't notice what was happening here. She cautiously moved backward, and her figure quickly and silently disappeared into the crowd. Jiang Ji-won thought that she had done it flawlessly, but she did not know that all her actions had been seen from the beginning. She's still as restless as ever, Shi retracted her gaze and looked lazy. Second young mistress indeed has foresight. The white-browed old man asked in a low voice. Why don't I? She doesn't need us to worry about her anymore, and there's no need to trouble you. Shi smiled. Although her lips were pale, her aura had recovered a lot. I don't need to think to know where she went. I'd like to see what kind of waves she can stir up. Yes. The night was dark. Jiang Ji-won relied on her previous memories and barely managed to return to the canyon. At this moment, the 9 dragon skeletons were quiet for some reason and just stood there. It was a little creepy in the night. Jiang Ji-won stuck her head out and looked down. She could barely see the outline of some gravel here, and the door was still open. However, it was dark inside and nothing could be seen. I guess I still have to go down. Jiang Ji-won took a deep breath and jumped down. As soon as she landed, Jiang Ji-won sensed that something was wrong. It was unknown when the heat in the canyon had dissipated. At this moment, she was standing not far from the door, but the heat from before had completely faded away. He even felt a little cold. She cautiously looked inside. Unfortunately, standing here, he still couldn't see anything. The cut on the door was sharp and neat. It was enough to show the strength of the person who wielded the sword and the sharpness of the sword. Jiang Ji-won could not suppress the jealousy in her heart. She knew that it was impossible for her to leave such a mark on the door with her own strength. But Chuyu could. Even though he was only a 9th stage warrior, his strength had long exceeded everyone's expectations. And that sword, one look and one could tell that it was no ordinary object. Why was he the only one who got all the good things? Jiang Ji-won was furious. She gritted her teeth and finally walked forward. Since Chuyu could obtain an opportunity here, then why couldn't she? In just a short distance of a dozen steps, Jiang Ji-won quickly arrived in front of the door. She paused and hesitated for a moment in front of the door. Then, she peeked inside through the hole in the door. It was dark, and there seemed to be a stream of light flashing past. But she couldn't tell what it was. She thought for a moment and finally stepped in. At the same time, the purple gold barrier finally dissipated. They turned into countless leaves again and flew back to the branches, still swaying. The commotion caused the hearts of all the spectators to tremble, and they hurriedly focused their gazes over. In the night, the purple gold Bodhi tree emitted a faint glow, outlining a slender figure. It was Chu Luiyue. Countless pairs of eyes fell on her face. The sparkling light made her porcelain white face look as clear as jade. Her pair of black jade-like eyes were as bright as stars. As her eyes moved, there seemed to be a flash of brilliance. Chu Yu! Elder Huafeng shouted in surprise. Everyone saw the youth look up, and then the corners of his lips curled up into a smile. In this deep and quiet night, he was like a pearl quietly blooming, dazzling. Everyone fell silent. It was clearly an ordinary and delicate face, but for some reason, because of this smile, it became lively. Chu Luiyue walked towards Lingxiao College. Elder Huafeng hurriedly pulled him to take a look. How are you? Are you injured? Did those three-eyed eagles make things difficult for you? Chu Luiyue smiled. I'm fine. Don't worry. Only then did Elder Huafeng feel relieved. That was true. With the crimson gold heavenly phoenix around, those guys probably wouldn't do anything to him. Chu Luiyue looked at his expression and basically guessed what he was thinking. The smile on her lips deepened. Actually, she didn't use this trump card. With Zichen around, wasn't it more suitable for her to appear than Dumpling? But this couldn't be said for the time being. Noticing the scrutinizing gazes around her, Chu Luiyue smiled in a seemingly unintentional manner. I asked the red-tailed phoenix to chat with them and explained everything clearly, so they didn't make things difficult for me. Oh right, there's also senior sister Shi Rui's contracted magical beasts. They finally agreed to return them. Everyone's expressions suddenly became strange. Why did everything seem so easy when it came out of Chu Yu's mouth? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1376. That was the legendary Three-Eyed Eagle clan. Since when did they become so easy to talk to? For the sake of the red-tailed phoenix, they didn't touch Chu Yu, but they actually agreed to release Shi Rui's contracted beast. Wasn't this too unbelievable? Even Shi Rui was shocked. She didn't care about her injured leg and limped over. The white-browed elder hurriedly supported her from the side, afraid that she would accidentally fall. Chu Yu, is what you said true? Shi Rui's heart was beating violently, and her eyes were full of expectation. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows and snapped his fingers. Whoosh! A legendary three-eyed eagle quickly flew over. Shi Rui's face suddenly burst with joy. This was the one she contracted. The legendary three-eyed eagle hovered above Shi Rui's head for a moment and looked at her apologetically. In fact, after the contract, Shi Rui had been very good to it. It would be a lie to say that it didn't have any feelings for it. It was just that it was in a dilemma when its clansmen came. On the one hand, it didn't want Shi Rui to get hurt. On the other hand, it didn't want to violate the rules of its clansmen, which led to this outcome. Fortunately, it was all over now. Shi Rui couldn't believe it and couldn't help but ask, Your clansmen won't pursue the matter of the contract between you and me? The legendary three-eyed eagle nodded and quickly looked at Chu Luiyue. Of course, the others didn't have any objections since the ancestor had spoken. Not to mention, the ancestor had already contracted with a human. It quickly returned to Shi Rui's body. Shi Rui was overjoyed and looked at Chu Luiyue with gratitude. Chu Yu, I really don't know how to thank you. Although Chu Yu didn't say much, she knew that he must have helped a lot. Although she didn't know how he persuaded the legendary Three-Eyed Eagle clan, but it was really too good. This legendary Three-Eyed Eagle was given to her by her father, and she had always treasured it. She originally thought that she was at the end of her rope, but who knew that there was a light at the end of the tunnel? Senior sister, you're welcome. It was willing to follow you anyway. Chu Luiyue smiled. The legendary Three-Eyed Eagle is arrogant, but it's also loyal and righteous. As long as you treat it well, you won't have to worry about other problems in the future. Did this mean that he had already convinced the legendary Three-Eyed Eagle clan? Shi Rui was shocked. With so many people present, all of them were reputable figures in the divine ruins world. Even if they went legendary three-eyed eagle, they wouldn't. After all, the legendary three-eyed eagle clan's eagle-re-eyed eagle clan choose legendary choo suit. What, to her, S's, Y. SSST. Chu Luiwa turned a blind eye to their gazes and turned around. The purple gold Bodhi tree stood there quietly. It didn't continue to grow, but it didn't hide either. The legendary three-eyed eagles that had appeared earlier all returned to the tree the moment she came out. Chu Luiwa persuaded them for a long time before they didn't send her out respectfully. After all, it wasn't good to be seen by others. It was better to keep a low profile. Sensing Chu Luiwa's gaze, they all looked over, their eyes shining. Chu Luiwa's eyes twitched. Originally, after knowing that Zichen had formed a contract with her, they felt that it was unfair. But later, when they heard that Zichen was saved by her and that she had helped him reconstruct his body, they were completely submissive to her. If not for the repeated warnings, they would have pounced on her again. She coughed and cupped her fists. Thank you for your understanding, everyone. There's still a long way to go. Screech. The legendary three-eyed eagles responded in unison. There was no longer any provocation or hostility in their cries. Instead, there was a trace of reluctance. The expressions of the onlookers became even more subtle. What did Chu Yu say and do to make the legendary three-eyed eagles treat her so politely? Elder Hua Feng revealed a meaningful expression. The crimson gold heavenly phoenix is indeed powerful, Elder. I suddenly remembered that I left some things in the tomb. I'm afraid I have to go back and get them. Elder Hua Feng was stunned. Tomb? What tomb? Chu Luiwa paused and explained. It's the place where I was locked up. The surroundings fell silent. Everyone's attention was immediately drawn over. Hearing Chu Luiwa's words, many people were surprised. Tomb. So that place is actually. All right then. We'll go back and get it together. Elder Hua Feng didn't want Chu Luiwa to go alone anymore, so he wanted to follow her no matter what. Chu Luiwa couldn't refuse and could only agree in the end. She lifted her foot and walked forward. Jean D and the others looked at each other and frowned. However, before they could speak, Chu Luiwa stopped and looked back. She raised her eyebrows slightly and said with a faint smile. By the way, there's something I forgot to tell everyone. The heavenly square cauldron that appeared before is fake. It's just an object that was transformed by the legendary three-eyed eagle, and it's still with them now. If you don't believe me, just go ahead and snatch it. Please forgive us. We'll accompany you. After saying that, she turned around and left, leaving everyone dumbfounded. This is what she said, true or false? The appearance of the heavenly square cauldron was sudden, and there was no phenomenon of heaven and earth. Now that I think about it, there seems to be something wrong with it. I think so too. That thing was controlled by the legendary three-eyed eagle before. This is abnormal in itself, right? Could it be that Chu Yu really has nothing to do with the heavenly square cauldron? Chu Luiwa turned a deaf ear to the voices behind her. Anyone with a brain would be able to guess what was going on by now. She only wanted to figure out one thing now. Why does it seem that someone is missing? Chu Luiwa walked a few steps and suddenly found that something was wrong. She looked around and found that someone was indeed missing. Where's Jiang Jiwan? The elders were also astonished. She was still here just now. It's only been a while. Where can she go? Shi Rui added. Chu Yu, if I'm not wrong, she should have gone to the place you went before. Chu Luiwa narrowed her eyes slightly. Shi Rui paused. Actually, I knew when she left, but I didn't stop her. She should be fine, right? Of course not. Chu Luiwa's lips curled up slightly, revealing a faint smile. That place is very safe. With that, she continued to walk forward. Shi Rui blinked her eyes blankly. Why did she feel that Chu Yu's expression just now was a little, as if he was waiting to watch a good show? Suddenly, she had a flash of inspiration. Could it be that there's something good hidden in that tomb? As Chu Luiyue walked forward, she kept calling for Taizu in her heart. Right now, she was eager to confirm the guess in her heart. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1377. Jiang Jiwon stepped through the door and entered. The surroundings were dark, and only a few pearls on the mountain wall flickered with a weak light, and she could barely see the scene in front of her. It was empty, and there was nothing. Jiang Jiwon was stunned, and her footsteps suddenly stopped. The surrounding atmosphere was a bit cold, and after staying for a long time, goosebumps involuntarily appeared on her body. She felt an inexplicable fear in her heart, and looked around again. It was still empty. Could it be that Chu Yu broke through from a rank 8 warrior to a rank 9 warrior here? Jiang Jiwon frowned, and felt that something was wrong. This place didn't seem to be anything special. Suddenly, her gaze focused. Not far in front, there seemed to be a flash of light. Because the surroundings were very dark, when the light appeared, it immediately attracted Jiang Jiwon's attention. Her hands were tightly clenched into a ball in her sleeves, and her body tensed up as she walked forward. The closer she got, the more she could feel the subtle airflow in the air. The space here was wrong. Many thoughts flashed through her mind quickly. The surrounding air gradually became sticky, and even gradually became laborious. Not long after, she was shocked to find that the force in her body was rapidly depleting. After going through so much, she didn't have much strength left, and now, it was almost exhausted. She hesitated in her heart and wanted to leave, but was afraid that she would miss something. In the end, she could only brace herself and continue forward. Fortunately, she was getting closer and closer to the flickering light. After shortening the distance, she finally saw the thing clearly. She was slightly stunned. That was because the thing that was shining with a faint glow was actually just a shattered piece of rock. This stone was completely black, and it was only the size of a fingernail, and it was quietly suspended in midair. When it rotated gently, it would reflect an extremely faint but gorgeous light. What she saw just now was this. Other than that, this stone was nothing out of the ordinary. There wasn't even a trace of energy fluctuation. Jiang Jiwon slowly frowned. What the hell? How could Chu Yu be able to devour the energy of heaven and earth to break through here? But she only saw this mess. She gritted her teeth and unwillingly grabbed the stone in her hand. It was hot to the touch. Ah! Jiang Jiwon threw the stone away and hurriedly looked at her palm. There was already a burn wound on it. Bang! The small stone was thrown to the ground and rolled some distance away. Jiang Jiwon. A clear and bright voice came from behind. Jiang Jiwon was startled and quickly looked back. When she saw the person's face, her heart skipped a beat. Chu Yu. You, when did you get here? Wasn't he still inside the barrier just a moment ago? How could they appear so quietly now? I just got here. Chu Luiyue smiled. Don't worry, I'm later than you. As she spoke, she looked down at the stone that Jiang Jiwon had thrown away and narrowed her eyes dangerously. What's wrong? What are you looking for? Jiang Jiwon took a step back guiltily. No, nothing. I was just curious, so I came to take a look. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath. That sense of familiarity surged again. She couldn't help but sigh softly. Why didn't I notice it before? Taizu. She said silently in her heart. Even though Taizu hadn't woken up yet and couldn't give her any response. Chu Luiyue rubbed the space between her eyebrows with a headache. She was probably the only one in the world who dug up her own ancestral grave. It's really a sin to disturb your peace. Don't worry, I'll get rid of all those messy things right away. Digression. Tomorrow at 12:00 mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1378. This is not a place you can come to. Please get out as soon as possible. Chu Luiyue looked at Jiang Jiwon and said calmly but firmly. Jiang Jiwon frowned. Of course, she did not agree. Do I have to go out just because you want me to? This isn't your territory. You have no right to order me. Chu Luiyue's lips moved. Not to mention anything else, this place really belonged to her Shengguan family. However, she couldn't be bothered to argue with Jiang Ziyuan about this. I'll count to 3. If you don't get out, then I'll help. Chu Luiyue said lightly, her eyes turning cold. Jiang Ziyuan felt an inexplicable chill in her heart, but it soon turned into embarrassment and anger. She was a demigod. Compared to Chu Yu, she was only stronger. But now she had to listen to him shouting here. How could there be such a logic in the world? Even if she was not as good as Chu Yu in some aspects, she was not to be trifled with. Thinking of this, Jiang Jiwon felt a lot more confident. She chuckled, but there was no trace of a smile on her face. Chu Yu, I know you're a lot more powerful now, but you're not invincible in the world. You can come to this place, but others can't. Are you afraid that I'll snatch some treasure here? While speaking, she kept staring at the young man in front of her, trying to see if there was any secret on his face. Unfortunately, there was none. There was a faint smile on that delicate and clean face, but no one could see what he was thinking. Especially those deep and bright eyes, which perfectly covered all his emotions. It was impossible to guess what he was thinking. For a moment, Jiang Jiwon's heart was beating a little. Even if there was a treasure here, would it have been snatched by Chu Yu? Chu Luiyue just looked at her quietly, the corners of her mouth slightly raised, and she sneered in her heart. It seemed that the experience in the northern region of the wilderness had exhausted Jiang Jiwon. Now, all her emotions were clearly written on her face, for fear that others could not see it. Even if she wanted a treasure, it was not like this. 1. Chu Luiyue raised a finger. Jiang Jiwon's heart skipped a beat, but she also felt a little disgusted. This Chu Yu really took himself quite seriously. She turned around and continued to search for something in the empty space. It was clear that she did not intend to pay any attention to Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows. 2. Jiang Jiwon turned a deaf ear to him. Many thoughts flashed through his mind. There were only 2 possibilities for a cultivator to break through consecutively in just a few days. Either that, or he had suddenly obtained an inheritance, which had led to a rapid increase in his cultivation. Either that, or the flow of time in the place he was in was different from the outside world, so in a very short period of time, he was able to achieve results that would take others months or even years to achieve. Judging from the strange sensations around us, it seems to be the second kind. 3. Chu Luiyue opened his red lips slightly and spat out this word coldly. Looking at Jiang Jiwon, who was walking freely inside and did not take her words to heart, Chu Luiyue smiled slightly. Since she was stubborn, there was no need to show mercy. Bang! Elder Huafeng and the others had just rushed over. Before they could say anything, they saw a figure fly out of the door and fall heavily to the ground. Pooh! Jiang Jiwon suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Her face was pale. Shi Rui, who was standing in front, took a step back in disgust. Although her body was covered in dust and blood, and she was in a very sorry state, being stained with Jiang Jiwon's blood still made her feel very uncomfortable. No one went forward to help Jiang Jiwon. Elder Huafeng glanced inside. Chu Yu? Chu Luiyue slowly walked out and clapped his hands. Senior Sister Jiang, I've already warned you earlier, but you refused to listen. Don't blame me. Everyone looked at each other. This Chu Yu was really bold. He didn't even avoid this matter. However, Jiang Jiwon had already been abandoned by Lingxiao College, so others naturally wouldn't be polite to her. When Jiang Jiwon heard this, she was so angry that her internal organs churned, and she almost couldn't breathe. Chu Yu. Don't go too far. This place doesn't belong to you. You have no right to treat me like this. Chu Luiyue glanced at her lazily. Senior Sister Jiang, don't you understand the principle of the strong being respected? If you want to stay, it's very simple. Just come in, as long as you can stay. After Chu Luiyue finished speaking, he raised his eyebrows slightly and said to Elder Huafeng and the others, Elder, I still have some things to deal with, so I'll go in first. I'll have to trouble you and everyone to wait for a moment. After saying that, she turned around without waiting for Elder Huafeng's reply. After taking a step, she stopped again and turned her head slightly to look at Jiang Jiwan with an extremely indifferent gaze. Senior Sister Jiang, I'll be waiting for you at any time. As soon as she finished speaking, her figure quickly disappeared behind the door. A silver barrier quickly appeared and sealed the entrance of the door. At the same time, it also isolated everything inside. Although everyone couldn't see anything from the outside. Jiang Jiwan was humiliated in public, and she was simply furious. However, she was currently riddled with injuries and could barely stand up. How could she rush over and ask for an explanation for herself? Her cultivation level was indeed higher than Chu Yu's. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be a problem for her to suppress the other party. However, after experiencing those things previously, she didn't have much strength left. On the other hand, Chu Yu was completely unharmed. Moreover, he had just broken through and was at his strongest state. Wasn't it obvious who would win and who would lose in such a situation? Behind them, the others who had rushed over saw this scene and were all stunned on the spot. Jean Di couldn't help but frown and ask in a deep voice, Huafeng, what does Chu Yu mean by this? Could it be that he intends to monopolize this place and not let us in? Previously, because of the sudden appearance of the fake heavenly square sacred cauldron, everyone's attention was attracted, so no one paid attention to this place. But now, they remembered that this might be the place where the real treasure was hidden. Chu Yu's attitude was also very suspicious, and it couldn't help but make people suspicious. Elder Huafeng sneered. You didn't come for so long before, but now that Chu Yu is back, you all remember? Jean Di didn't care about these sarcastic words and raised his foot to walk forward. Since the door is already open, we have to go in and take a look. However, just as he took a few steps, he heard a cold voice coming from inside the door. From now on, no one is allowed to enter this place again. If anyone wants to give it a try, just come. Arrogant. Arrogant. Because of shock, almost everyone's eyes widened as they looked at each other. Jean Di couldn't help but let out a ha. What a good Chu Yu. Aren't you thinking too highly of yourself? Today, I'd like to see how long you can guard this place. As he spoke, he waved his arm and a golden spear appeared in his hand. Chi. The spear pierced through the air. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1379. Jean Di threw the spear directly at the broken hole on the door. His previous experience told him that this door was not so easy to deal with. To be on the safe side, he still chose the easiest position to break through. But soon, he found that his idea was really childish and ridiculous. That was because the gun was stopped 3 steps away from the door by the tyrannical aura from above. It was firmly blocked outside. Jean Di's face changed. He quickly stepped forward, grabbed the handle of the spear, and stabbed forward with all his strength. Nothing moved. There seemed to be an invisible iron wall in front of him, isolating everything easily. He tried his best, but he still couldn't even leave a ripple. It was ridiculous. Jean Di's face flushed red. He was angry. Cunning. He tried twice and found that he couldn't continue, so he simply chose to give up. He turned around and shouted angrily at Elder Huafeng, Huafeng. Is this how Lingxiao College teaches students? Elder Huafeng raised his eyebrows high, and his expression became a little strange. He looked at the huge hole in the door that was still extremely sturdy, then looked at Jean Di, who was flustered and exasperated, and curled his lips. Jean Di, it seems to be your fault that you can't get in, right? He didn't have the ability, but he still wanted to push the blame to others. Moreover, the other party was a youth. What was this? Wasn't that a little too shameless? Although the remaining two sentences were not said, Elder Huafeng's eyes and expression had already surpassed all words. Jindi's eyes were wide open, and there seemed to be two balls of burning anger in his eyes. His chest rose and fell violently. You! Huafeng. Don't go too far. Are we the ones who are going too far? Elder Huafeng simply found a stone to lean against, crossed his arms, and looked relaxed. We're not stopping you. What do you want to do? Just do it directly. As he spoke, he seemed to think that it was not enough, and he waved at the crowd beside him. Everyone of Lingxiao College, listen up, rest here. If anyone still wants to break through the door, we don't need to pay attention to them. Just watch from the side. Everyone responded in unison, yes. Jin was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Watch from the side. Wasn't it obvious that they wanted to see him make a fool of himself? However, he just couldn't open the door. Even if there was a huge hole in it. What a great humiliation. Golden Flute took back his spear and spat on the ground. He didn't turn around and leave. Instead, he just stood there and stared at the flickering barrier. There must be something wrong here. No matter what, he was still a dignified high god powerhouse. How could he be so easily stopped by the barrier of a 9th stage warrior? The rest of the onlookers were originally a little restless, but after seeing his series of circumstances, they all settled down and decided to wait and see. Thus, for various reasons, the area in front of the door quickly quieted down. Other than the strange atmosphere, everything else was normal. Elder Huafeng sneered and closed his eyes. It had always been Chuyu taking advantage of others. He had never seen anyone being able to get anything back from Chuyu. To deal with him. How rare. Just look at how ugly Jindi's face was. How refreshing. Thinking of this, Elder Huafeng inexplicably felt a little proud in his heart. The students of Lingxiao College were indeed extraordinary. Chuyu's ability to cause trouble is really amazing. An elder next to him couldn't help but laugh softly. They had always been at odds with the Golden Wing sect. Of course, they were very happy to see the other party suffer. Er's eyes flashed and she asked hesitantly. Elder Huafeng, don't you think that Chuyu is really similar to that person in some ways? Elder Huafeng's expression froze, and he immediately looked at the door with a complicated gaze. Behind the flickering silver barrier was everything that no one knew. He didn't speak. If it wasn't for this, why would he have taken care of Chuyu since he entered the academy? Not to mention this time, he was in a daze and directly brought Chuyu to the northern border of the wilderness. Even if he knew that it was extremely dangerous, according to Chuyu's identity, he should firmly refuse. But he didn't. Wasn't it because of those eyes that were very similar, and, it's all in the past? Elder Huafeng closed his eyes. There's no need to mention it again. That girl, she didn't even reply to a message for so long. Who knew where she had gone? As long as she didn't come back, they wouldn't mention her. Wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, she only nodded slightly. After isolating herself from the outside world, Chu Luiyue returned to the tomb. She stood in the middle and looked around at the empty surroundings. She couldn't help but sigh softly. Then, she lifted the hem of her clothes and knelt down. She bowed her head and kowtowed to the tombstone. Taizu, you was wrong. Please punish me. No one responded. Chu Luiyue lowered her head to the ground. After a while, she straightened up. Taizu seemed to still be asleep and showed no signs of waking up. This made Chu Luiyue a little worried, but she also faintly looked forward to it. Now, she was basically sure that this was Taizu's real tomb. Then, it was very likely that Taizu's last incomplete soul was hidden here. If she could gather it, Chu Luiyue thought for a moment and took out the jade pendant. In the dark space, the jade pendant emitted two balls of faint light, like flowing water slowly surging within. Unfortunately, it didn't fuse. These were the two incomplete parts of Taizu's soul. Chu Luiyue had already gathered them together, but she hadn't been able to fuse them. She didn't know if the last part was also here. Chu Luiyue clenched the jade pendant tightly and frowned slightly. According to the legendary three-eyed eagle, the great ancestor had fought fiercely against the 9 giant dragons by himself back then. Even the most inferior bloodline of the dragon race was more than enough to deal with the human race. Taizu could fight 9 dragons alone and even use 9 dragon bones to suppress his tomb in the end. Then, how strong was he back then? Why did the incomplete soul in the Tianling god realm always think that it was still stuck at the demigod realm and couldn't break through? Also, Taizu was so familiar with the primordial north region. What did he do here back then? Taizu, wake up quickly. Chu Luiyue closed her eyes, clasped her hands in front of her, and prayed silently. Now, she only hoped that Taizu would be safe. She didn't know if the broken tombstone would affect Taizu. Chu Luiyue felt guilty at the thought of this. Hopefully, that tombstone, boom. A loud sound suddenly came from the mountain wall above her head. The entire tomb trembled violently. Chu Luiyue suddenly stood up. A cold and gloomy aura was rapidly approaching. Her heart trembled. It's coming with ill intentions. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1380. The people waiting outside were even more shocked than Chu Luiyue. Most of them were thinking about how to choose. Should they continue to wait patiently or think of a way to break in? In fact, everyone was ready to make a move, but what happened before was enough to calm them down and strive to find the best solution. However, no one had expected that before they could think of anything, someone had already barged in and made a move first. In the sky above, several figures in black robes attacked and directly attacked the people below. Elder Huafeng tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and quickly flew up. Who are you? There were about 7 or 8 people on the other side. All of them had their faces covered. However, the aura on their bodies was very strong. All of them were high gods. Especially the man at the front. His figure was a little bent, and he seemed to be an old man. His aura was obscure, and it was impossible to see his strength at all. Elder Huafeng's heart sank. The other party had just broken in directly. They were probably prepared. These people didn't pay any attention to Elder Huafeng. They just kept attacking downwards as if they wanted to collapse the entire tomb. Kacha. A huge crack appeared on the stone at the top. Elder Huafeng's expression changed. Before he could say anything, he saw a figure rushing out from below. Slender and agile, it was Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue gently nodded at Elder Huafeng. Elder Huafeng hesitated for a moment and took a few steps back. But his heart was still full of worry. He stared at the 2 sides in front of him without blinking. Chu Luiyue stood in the air, facing the other party from a distance. She quickly glanced at the other party and found that she didn't know these people. However, the chilling aura on their bodies was somewhat familiar. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes and suddenly smiled. May I know everyone's names, and why have you all come here? The leading old man's voice was cold and indifferent. My master wants to see you. Chu Luiyue was stunned at first, but then she raised her eyebrows slightly. Who is your master? If you want to see me, you have to tell me your identity, right? You don't have the right to ask. The old man didn't seem to put Chu Luiyue in his eyes at all. Every word he said could not be disobeyed. Just come with us. Otherwise, everyone here will pay the price for your choice. The old man's tone was flat, as if he was just stating an ordinary matter. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. Taizu was now at a critical juncture. If she left, she didn't know what would happen. However, the old man's second sentence quickly made Chu Luiyue change his mind. Don't worry, one of your old acquaintances is also here. You haven't seen each other for a long time. It's time to visit him. Chu Luiyue clenched his fists. Who? The old man gave her a meaningful look. Mu Qinghe. Chu Luiyue immediately said, I'll go with you. Chu Yu. Elder Huafeng was shocked and hurriedly tried to dissuade him. Chu Yu, think twice. These people were obviously not good people. Wouldn't it be dangerous to go with them? At that time, it would be difficult to escape. Chu Luiyue shook her head gently. Elder Huafeng, I have to go this time. Don't worry, I know what to do. Seeing her determined attitude, Elder Huafeng opened his mouth, but in the end, he could only shake his head and sigh. Who exactly was that Mu Qinghe? When Chu Yu heard this name, his expression changed. He even ignored the danger and wanted to leave with them. If something were to happen to him, Chu Luiyue looked at the old man. Let's go. The few of them surrounded Chu Luiyue and flew towards the depths of the northern region of the primordial world. Their figures quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. When they were sure that they could no longer be seen, the onlookers looked at Elder Huafeng and the others with subtle expressions. Which family was that just now? I can't tell, but he's not weak, especially the one who spoke. I'm afraid that not many of us here are his match. But he doesn't seem to be from the aristocratic families of the Divine Ruins world. Why did they call Chu Yu away? They even said that they were meeting an old friend. Who is that Mu Qinghe? Everyone discussed animatedly, but they were all confused. Shi Rui looked at Elder Huafeng and couldn't help but ask in a low voice. Elder, are we really just going to watch? What if Chu Yu, he's obviously not a match for those people. What if something happened to him if he followed him? Elder Huafeng closed his eyes. Chu Yu means that we shouldn't follow him. He might have other plans. But his strength is limited, and he's alone. What other plans can he have? Shi Rui frowned. Chu Yu had saved her before, so she had always been very grateful to him. She absolutely couldn't bear to see anything happen to him. Elder Huafeng was about to say something when he suddenly felt something. He flipped his palm and took out a green jade token. This was Elder Bo Yan's. The light spot on it suddenly burst out with a dazzling light. A powerful summon came from it. Elder Huafeng was surprised and happy. Bo Yan is looking for us. Hearing this, everyone from Lingxiao College rushed over. The expressions of the elders were especially tense. Really? Don't make a mistake like last time, right? After all, they had already suffered a loss once. Elder Huafeng clenched the green jade token in his hand. No. It's true this time. Because this was a signal that would only be sent out when the owner of the green jade token was in danger of life and death. Bo Yan and the other's situation was not optimistic. As soon as these words were said, everyone looked at each other and fell silent. Then on one side was Chu Yu, and on the other side was Bo Yan and the others. It was really difficult to choose. Elder Huafeng clenched his fists. After thinking for a long time, he finally gritted his teeth and made up his mind. Let's go find Bo Yan and the others first. As for Chu Yu, since he dared to go, he must have the confidence to come back. Moreover, those people who had appeared just now were very powerful. Only by finding the other people in the college would they have a chance of winning. If they rashly went now, it would be useless. After making the decision, the people of Lingxiao College quickly gathered and left together without any reluctance. The remaining people, Jean Di and the others, were stunned. They all left just like that? First, Chu Yu was taken away, and then the people of Lingxiao College quickly left. Did they really not want to stay here anymore? He couldn't help but look at the huge tomb, but he was shocked to find that the silver barrier was still there. He gritted his teeth and looked at the crowd. Everyone, who else wants to go in, please take a step forward. Let's do it together. If we find any treasures inside, we'll split them equally. What do you think? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1381. Many people sneered in their hearts. Divide equally? That was pure nonsense. None of the people present were vegetarians. If they really saw the treasure, how could they obediently wait for it to be divided equally? When the time came, they would definitely fight. They might even fight to the death. However, judging from Chu Yu's attitude earlier, there might really be something here. It was not impossible to work together to break this barrier first. I'll do it. I'll do it too. Almost everyone expressed their agreement one after another. Therefore, after a short discussion, everyone present began to work together. They tried their best to break that barrier. Chu Luyue, who had already gone far away, turned back to take a look. Even though she couldn't see anything here, she could roughly guess what the situation was on the other side of the tomb. She only hoped that the barrier left behind by Taizu was strong enough to hold on for a while. It's right in front. The old man in the lead said indifferently. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. She immediately retracted her gaze and looked forward. It was a snowfield. Crystal clear snowflakes piled up into a thick layer. It was the darkest time of the night. Even the ice and snow looked much colder than during the day. She stood still with the few people in front of her. Then, the old man stepped forward alone. Chu Luyue stood behind him. She could only see his hands dancing. Soon, the snow on the ground quickly melted. A large open space was revealed. She looked over, and her heart seemed to be tightly gripped by something. With just a glance, she could tell that there was another mystery under the ground. Sure enough, the old man flew down and knocked twice on the ground. Click, with an extremely soft sound, an entrance appeared on the ground. It was pitch black, and nothing could be seen. There was a trace of heart-palpitating coldness. No one knew what was down there. Please, the old man turned around and glanced at Chu Luyue extremely coldly. Miss Shangguan. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. As expected. When they said Mu Qinghe's name, she guessed that they already knew her identity. This was also the reason why she had chosen to follow him. Nowadays, not many people knew about her true identity. Even Jiang Jiwan only had suspicions, but was unable to confirm them. However, these people seemed to be very confident. Moreover, what they knew was obviously more than she had expected. Without any hesitation, Chu Luyue flew down and walked to the entrance. She looked down, only to see a cold and dark staircase. She lifted her foot and walked down. Bang! Not long after she went down, those people closed the entrance again. To Chu Liyue's surprise, they did not follow him down. This made her heart sink. Because this didn't mean that they had let down their guard against her. On the contrary, only if there was an existence more powerful than them down there would they be so relieved to leave and let her come in alone. It was lonely and cold, dark and cramped. Only the sound of Chu Liyue's footsteps echoed in the entire space. Soon, she saw a person. She couldn't be more familiar with that figure. He sat on the ground and leaned against the wall, motionless. His hands and feet were chained, and he was locked in that small space. His clothes were a little disheveled and stained with blood. His breathing was weak and he looked very miserable. If it weren't for the slight rise and fall of his chest, Chu Luyue would have thought that he was dead. Mu Qinghe. She paused for a moment and spoke softly. Hearing her voice, the man, who had his head lowered, finally moved. He looked up hesitantly. When he saw Chu Luyue, a trace of confusion flashed across his eyes. But soon, he recognized Chu Liyue's identity. His pale and cracked lips trembled slightly, as if there were many things he wanted to say. But in the end, he just lowered his eyes again. Greetings, Your Highness. Chu Luyue walked down the stairs and stood there for a long while, looking at Mu Qinghe. If it weren't for his response, she wouldn't have dared to confirm that this emaciated and haggard man in front of her was the high-spirited and proud Mu Qinghe who had followed her for many years. Somehow, when she saw this scene, she felt as if her heart had been hit by something and she felt a little sour. She didn't know if it was for him or for herself. In the past, they had fought side by side. But today, it was as if they were facing each other with swords. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and looked around. Then, she focused her gaze. Right in the middle, there was a huge bronze mirror. The appearance of the copper mirror was extremely familiar. She stared at it for a few seconds and suddenly, an idea flashed across her mind. This was exactly the same bronze mirror she saw in the Crown Prince's study in the Baiming dynasty. Shengguan Yu. A low and hoarse voice suddenly came from the bronze mirror. Chu Luiyue's eyes moved slightly, and the corners of her lips lifted slightly. At this time, Your Highness still won't show your true self? The other party chuckled. It seems that you're very curious about me. Chu Luiyue's smile deepened. Mu Qinghe is actually one of your people, right? If I'm not wrong, Jiang Yuqing seems to be of the same status. You're as smart as before. The other party chose to admit it openly. Obviously, he was very confident and wasn't afraid of Chu Luiyue causing any trouble here. Smart people always make smart choices. I'm sure you know why I've invited you here today. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes and raised her eyebrows. Sorry, I don't know. Please enlighten me. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1382. Shengguan Yu, you and I are both sensible people. Why are we going around in circles and wasting each other's time? The other party laughed, but there was a pressure that couldn't be ignored. You don't really think that you can perfectly hide that thing and no one will notice it, do you? Chu Luiyue didn't say anything. She was sure that the other party was also here for the water droplet. She just didn't know who the other party was. Before coming, she had suspected that the other party was the person who had been lodging in Shengguan Wan's body. However, when the other party spoke, she knew that wasn't the case. Indeed, you used the cicada's shell shedding technique very well. However, you forgot that as long as that thing is still with you, it will be impossible for no one to notice it. In the end, it was all for nothing. Chu Luiyue was suddenly stunned. Cicada's shell shedding technique? What did that mean? Could it be that he was talking about her rebirth? However, she was clearly killed by someone back then. Suddenly, something flashed through her mind. She turned her head abruptly and looked at Mu Qinghe, who was beside her. Mu Qinghe was kneeling on the ground with his head lowered. She couldn't see his expression clearly. Only his tightly clenched hands showed that he wasn't as calm as he looked. Countless scenes flashed before her eyes. Back then her death, what exactly was, whoosh. A blood-red whip suddenly flew out of the bronze mirror and went straight for Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue immediately retreated. However, she was fast, but the blood-red whip was even faster. In the blink of an eye, it had already flown in front of Chu Luiyue's face. Chu Luiyue raised her hand and red flames set up a barrier in front of her. Sizzle. An unpleasant smell spread out and was almost nauseating. The blood-red whip seemed to have touched something terrifying and quickly melted. Crimson gold celestial phoenix. The voice in the bronze mirror finally changed its tone and was full of shock and disbelief. Then, the person sneered. Heh, I didn't expect that after not seeing you for so long, your luck is still as good as before even though your strength has dissipated. There was too much information in his words. Chu Luiyue dealt with it while thinking about it in his heart. This guy. She had actually seen it before. And from the looks of it, he had known for a long time that the water droplet was in her body. Pa! Another blood whip lashed out. This time, the power contained in it was clearly much stronger than before. A hole appeared in Chu Luiyue's barrier. The blood whip was extremely nimble and cunning, and it quickly spread out from within. He viciously struck at Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue was alarmed. He was definitely stronger than the exalted gods. If she were to be hit by this attack, she would probably lose half of her life. In an instant, Chu Liuyue's body flashed with a golden light. At the same time, a black shield suddenly appeared on her left hand. Boom! The blood-red whip viciously struck the black shield. Chu Liuyue's qi and blood surged, and she suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. A terrifying power wrapped around her body, and she flew out uncontrollably. Bang! She crashed heavily into the wall behind her, and then fell to the ground. Her back almost split open. Intense pain engulfed her entire body. Her face instantly turned pale. Mu Qinghe knelt on the ground, her head bowed even lower, and her hands clenched even tighter. What a pity. That thing has already recognized you as its master. It will take some effort to get it out. As he spoke, the blood whip had already transformed into a long knife. It stabbed straight at Chu Liuyue's lower abdomen. Suddenly, the void in front of Chu Liuyue rippled. The blood-red long knife was silently blocked just like that. Chu Liuyue was stunned. She looked up and saw a tall figure walking out of it. He was wearing a black brocade robe today, and his whole body was emitting a shocking cold aura. His every movement was oppressive and noble, but also arrogant and indifferent. What was even more shocking was that the hem of his robe was already stained with blood. As he walked, there were even drops of blood dripping down. It seemed that he had just rushed over from a fierce battle. The thick stench of blood made it hard for people to breathe. However, Chu Liuyue's heart suddenly calmed down. It was as if with this person around, he could shelter her from all the wind and rain, and she would be worry-free. He raised his hand and clenched it in the air. Bang! That extremely ferocious blood-red long saber actually shattered into pieces just like that, and then it completely dissipated into nothingness. Rongxiu. The man in the bronze mirror also seemed to be very shocked. What are you doing here? Rongxiu chuckled. She's here, so it's not strange that I'm here. But it seems that I've disappointed you. The other party was silent for a moment, and then he sneered. You're more difficult to deal with than before. It's your people who are too weak. Rongxiu said lightly, as if the clouds and the wind were blowing. The other party seemed to be choked and unable to speak. Chu Liuyue was about to speak, but suddenly felt a wave of fluctuation in her dantian. Crack. A faint cracking sound was clearly transmitted into his ears. It was that the black pyramid had cracked open again. There seemed to be something inside that was ready to rush out. Rongxiu suddenly looked back. Chu Liuyue looked up in shock. The two of them looked at each other. For a moment, endless thoughts and longing surged in her heart. They had not seen each other for a while, but Chu Liuyue felt that it had been too long. She opened her mouth, and her voice was so weak that it seemed to dissipate with the wind at any time. Rongxiu. As soon as her voice fell, countless images flooded into her mind. She closed her eyes and fell to the ground. Rongxiu's sword-like eyebrows furrowed. His figure flashed, and he quickly rushed over and took her into his arms. Digression. Tomorrow at 12:00, mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1383. Smack. Several blood whips came from behind him. Like sharp claws and teeth, they surrounded Rongxiu completely. Rongxiu held her tightly in his arms and suddenly turned around. A murderous intent flashed in his cold and dark eyes. Vaguely, there seemed to be golden flames burning. Boom! A barrier formed by golden flames appeared in front of him. It blocked all the blood whips. The two forces collided fiercely. Rongxiu's shoulders sank, and his feet sank half an inch into the ground. Rongxiu, leave her here, and I'll let you go today. A gloomy and cold voice was heard. It was like a poisonous snake coiling around one's heart, making one shudder. Rongxiu's thin lips curled slightly, but his smile was very cold. After so many years, it seems like you haven't changed your bad habit of daydreaming. Rong Xiu. This sentence obviously provoked the other party, and he immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. In that case, don't blame me for being rude. As soon as he finished speaking, the blood on the bronze mirror surged. A strong smell of blood spread from it. Immediately, a translucent blood-colored figure suddenly condensed in midair. It was a middle-aged man with blank eyes and a stiff and lifeless expression, like a puppet. He quickly flew toward Rong Xiu. Then, a second figure appeared one after another. He attacked from another direction and surrounded Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes slightly. These two people were actually god venerables who were even more powerful than high gods. You're willing to go all out? Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly, and the golden flames in his eyes burned even more fiercely. This kind of special puppet without a physical body or divine body was created by a real cultivator using a secret technique. Once it was summoned, it could only experience one battle. After that, it would die. However, this was not without its benefits. These special puppets could often use all their strength in battle. They could use all their strength at once. This was also one of the reasons why they were so difficult to deal with. As long as we can keep her here, this little loss is nothing. The other party chuckled. She managed to escape in the past, but this time, it won't be so easy. Rong Xiu looked down at the person in his arms. Chu Luiyue seemed to have completely fainted. His eyes were tightly shut and his face was pale. Her thick and long eyelashes trembled slightly, as if she was trapped in a terrifying nightmare. Rong Xiu's heart felt like it was being squeezed by something. He hugged her even tighter, carefully lifting her head and burying it in his chest. After making sure that she wouldn't suddenly wake up, he looked up. Let's end this quickly, he said indifferently. If Chu Luiyue could wake up now, he would be able to see that the current Rong Xiu was very different from what he had seen in the past. His handsome and enchanting face was as calm as water, but it also seemed to be covered with frost that would not melt for 1,000 years. No matter what happened, it would not be able to cause any change in his expression. The most amazing thing about him was his eyes. 2 pupils, one bright gold, the other black. The golden flames burned fiercely, the holy light seemed to be able to burn all the filth and despicable in the world clean. The thick ink in deep water surged, cold and noble, and seemed to be able to cover and devour everything in the world. These 2 strong and opposite colors appeared on his body at this time, but it was not abrupt at all. Instead, it seemed incomparably harmonious. My patience is limited, he said word by word. The cold voice echoed in the entire space, like a saint's ruling. Bah! What the hell is this place? We've been busy for so long, but there's still no sign of it breaking. In the canyon, everyone gathered here. After several attempts, the silver barrier still did not move. Finally, someone could not help but curse. That Chu Yu is just a rank 9 warrior, and he can enter and exit freely. Instead, so many of us working together is useless. What the hell? As soon as these words came out, the faces of everyone present turned ugly. Which one of them was not much stronger than Chu Yu, but no matter how hard they tried, they still could not open this barrier. If no one could enter, then it would be fine. But there was a Chu Yu in front of them who could enter and exit at will. With such a comparison, who would feel good in their hearts? The people of Lingxiao College are really cunning. They left just like that. If Hua Feng and the others were still here, they would definitely go and ask for an explanation. Bang! Jean Di stabbed the spear in his hand into the ground. The stone was hard, and this directly shook his hand until it went numb. This made his already unhappy mood even worse. There must be something wrong with this place. And that Chu Yu. He's not a simple person. At the beginning, he only thought that the other party was an ordinary youth and did not put him in his eyes at all. Now, it seemed that he was completely wrong. If he was really ordinary, he would not have been able to snatch the treasure from Jean Lei. And he would not have caused Jean Lei's death. Jean Di slapped his forehead heavily. Why didn't he think of this before? I think it's not a good idea for us to continue like this. Why don't we wait for Chu Yu to come back and let him open the barrier directly? I think this shouldn't be difficult for him, right? A middle-aged man snorted coldly. His expression was unhappy, and his tone was a little strange. Demigods and high gods gathered here, but they're not as good as a stage 9 warrior. If word gets out, I'm afraid no one will believe it. Enough. What's the use of saying this now? Besides, Chu Yu has already been taken away. Whether he can come back or not is another matter. By the way, speaking of this, do you know the identity of the group of people who took him away before? Everyone shook their heads, indicating that they did not know. Jean D sneered. I don't know their origins, but I can see that the old man in the lead is a real god. Don't forget, the one who wants to see Chu Yu is his master. What kind of person would the master of a god expert be? Just thinking about it sent chills down one's spine. Whoever wants to wait, just wait. Waiting for Chu Yu to come back might not be as promising as waiting for him to break through to the god realm. These words calmed many people down. But this was still a dead end. They couldn't open the barrier even if they worked together, and it was also uncertain whether Chu Yu could come back. Were they going to stay here forever? Jean D frowned and looked at the door. What was inside? On the other side, Elder Hua Feng and the others had already left. It was snowing heavily again. The cold wind whistled, and every step consumed more energy. Everyone was silent as they walked forward. After an unknown period of time, Elder Hua Feng looked at the green jade token in his hand and finally heaved a sigh of relief. They're right in front. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1384. Hearing this voice, everyone came back to their senses. Their spirits were much higher as they raised their heads to look. However, the snow in front of them seemed to be no different from other places. Elder Hua Feng quickly realized this, and the smile on his face froze for a moment. He glanced down again. The light spot on the green jade token was indeed not far ahead. There shouldn't be a mistake this time. If Elder Bo Yen and the others are really in front, they should be able to sense our arrival, right? But why isn't anyone coming out? Shi Rui and the others came with him. Although their auras were still weak, they had recovered a lot. You guys wait here first, I'll go take a look. With that, Elder Hua Feng took the lead and walked forward. 2 other elders followed after him. Elder Hua Feng wanted to refuse, but in the end, he chose to go with them. After walking for a distance, the 3 of them stood still and looked at a large open space in front of them in shock. That's right, it was an open space. In this place, the snow had melted, and there was not a single snowflake on the black ground. Even the snow that was falling from the sky seemed to have deliberately avoided this place and landed on the side. It was as if there was an invisible enchantment that surrounded this place. Bo Yen should be here. Why isn't there anyone? Elder Hua Feng frowned and muttered in a low voice. Could it be that it's the same as before? No. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. They're below. The other 2 elders were originally confused, but when they heard this, they were shocked. What? Elder Hua Feng stared at the empty ground. In the dark, he could vaguely sense a trace of origin power surging. Elder, what's wrong? The people behind saw them standing there without moving for a long time and were afraid that something had happened, so they hurriedly rushed over. When they saw the scene in front of them, they all fell silent. This, Shi Rui looked at Elder Hua Feng with uncertainty. Elder Bo Yen and the others are really here? Elder Hua Feng took a deep breath. I'm afraid. They're below. Shi Rui's pupils constricted. It can't be. What's going on down there? Hua Feng should be right. Elder Dan Qing, who had been silent the entire time, suddenly spoke. Previously, when we were in trouble, those people suddenly rushed out from underground, rumble. The ground suddenly shook violently. Then, on the originally empty ground, countless streams of light interweaved. In the blink of an eye, it condensed into a huge Xian formation. Several figures flew out from within. It was heading straight for Elder Hua Feng and the others. These people were the same as those who had appeared before. They were all wearing black robes, and their faces were also covered with black veils. It was impossible to see their original appearances. Trespassers of the dungeon, die. Elder Hua Feng's heart sank. It seemed like they had found the other party's territory. But at the same time, this also confirmed one thing: Bo Yen and the rest were indeed imprisoned below. Kill. Elder Hua Feng waved his hands and a huge Xian formation quickly appeared. The other elders immediately made their moves too. In fact, there weren't many of these black-clothed men. There were only 6 of them. Compared to the dozens of people from Lingxiao College and the Meteor Sect, they didn't have the advantage. However, the key was that Elder Hua Feng and the others had experienced a long journey and didn't have much strength left. Not to mention, many of them were injured during the journey. On the other hand, although the other party had fewer people, they were all very strong and powerful. Under such circumstances, both sides quickly fell into a stalemate. However, Elder Hua Feng and the others knew very well that this couldn't go on. The longer this dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for them. Just as everyone was gradually falling into a disadvantage, a powerful and loud roar suddenly came from the sky. Roar! This voice contained an extremely powerful aura and immediately attracted everyone's attention. Everyone raised their heads to look. He saw a snow-white figure breaking through the clouds and fog. In the blink of an eye, it had already rushed from the horizon to the front. It was a white lion. Its fur was as white as snow, and its ice-blue eyes were like the best sapphires, cold and disdainful. It was domineering. Its body was wrapped in a shocking coldness. Wherever it passed, it left a long ice bridge in midair. When Elder Hua Feng and the others saw this, they were both surprised and delighted. Its little snowflake. Snowy's originally fierce expression almost collapsed. With a slip of his feet, he flew straight toward those black-clothed men. Fortunately, its psychological quality was much stronger than before. It quickly adjusted its mentality and directly charged into the group of black-clothed men. The combat strength of a magical beast was much stronger than that of a human of the same level. Not to mention Snowy, who had recently strengthened its cultivation. It sent one of them flying with a slap of its paw. With a swing of its head, it knocked the other one away. The sound of bones shattering was particularly pleasant at this moment. The situation on the battlefield instantly changed. Shi Rui heaved a sigh of relief and couldn't help but smile. It seems that Rongxiu is here. The others obviously realized this as well, and their expressions became much more relaxed. Elder Hua Feng glanced at the 2 elders beside him. You guys watch over here first. I'll go and break that Xian formation. Okay. Underground. A fierce battle. Golden and black flames flew out and formed an illusion in front of Rongxiu. That illusion was exactly the same as Rongxiu. 2 divine bodies. The sudden appearance of the 2 divine bodies obviously shocked the man in the bronze mirror. In the world, he had never seen anyone who could cultivate 2 divine bodies at the same time. How did Rongxiu do it? Before he could figure it out, those illusions had already started fighting. Since you've used your divine bodies, I'd like to see if you can stop me with your own body. As he spoke, a few blood whips flew out and headed straight for Rongxiu. Without the protection of his divine body, Rongxiu's body was extremely weak. As long as he hit Pa, a huge reddish-gold figure blocked in front of Rongxiu. It was Dumpling. She spread her wings and occupied almost half of the space here. Those blood whips were directly shattered by her wings. Boom! Reddish-gold flames spread out. The entire space instantly turned into a sea of fire. The stairs began to collapse. Mu Qinghe was still kneeling on the ground. When the flames burned over, the chains on his hands and feet instantly turned red. The scalding heat burned his skin and flesh at his wrists and ankles, instantly scorching them. Terrifying pain instantly engulfed his entire body. At this moment, Rongxiu glanced over. His finger moved slightly, and a golden line flew out. Mu Qinghe looked down and saw an extremely faint golden light flash in front of him. As long as he took a step forward, he would be able to cut the chains. He closed his eyes. Because of the pain, the veins on his forehead were bulging. Then, he took a step back and dodged. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1385. Mu Qinghe fell to the ground. At this moment, he was only an inch away from the golden line. But he did not move. The intense pain made him curl up his body unconsciously. Waves of burnt smell came from his body. Especially his wrists and ankles, they were charred black, and his flesh was twisted and distorted under the high temperature. There was not a single trace of blood on his face, as pale as a ghost. Blood kept flowing out of the corner of his mouth. His body was burning hot, but he also felt that his body was getting colder inch by inch. Along with his skin, muscles, blood, bones, it was like falling into an abyss. His consciousness was also gradually blurring. In his blank mind, there was only a familiar, smiling face left. At that time, she was still young, but she had already shown her imposing aura. Even when walking on the crowded street, she was still the most eye-catching one. Anyone who saw her would know that she must have an extraordinary identity. In comparison, he, who was dirty and skinny, was as lowly as mud. When she walked over, for the first time, he even had the thought of running away. However, a humble desire surged in the deepest part of his heart, and in the end, he chose to stay where he was. A long time later, he learned that there was a word that could be used to describe the situation at that time. The difference was like heaven and earth. Then come with me. She tilted her head and said with a smile. At that time, he knew that this sentence had decided his life. Mu Qinghe curled up, her head buried in her arms. It seemed that this was the only way to be safe. His lips moved, but he felt that there were flames spreading on his tongue. Your Highness, he murmured, and his weak voice dissipated between his lips. The surrounding flames quickly surged and completely swallowed his body. A faint light flashed in Rongxiu's eyes, and he immediately withdrew the golden line. He glanced at the person in his arms. The surrounding heat waves were rolling, but she still showed no signs of waking up. Rongxiu hugged her tightly, turned around, and quickly headed for the exit. The stairs had already collapsed, but this was not a problem for him. Behind him, the phantoms were still fighting fiercely. The blood whips had long been burned to ashes in the fierce flames. Rongxiu struck out with his palm. The seal on top of his head was opened. A ray of sunlight shone in. He turned around to take a look, and then his figure flashed and vanished on the spot. Rongxiu. A roar filled with anger and unwillingness reverberated through the underground. Rongxiu emerged from the ground and raised his wrist. Two streaks of golden and black flames rushed out and returned to his body. Tuanzi also flew out after her. The inside of the cave was pitch black, and one could vaguely see the blazing flames. Rongxiu raised his hand. An incomparably complicated Xian formation instantly flew out and directly sealed the entrance of the cave. The totem of the Yuntian Tower was faintly discernible. Very quickly, the sinister voice gradually dissipated. Rongxiu closed his eyes. The other party did not dare to come out. At most, this was the extent of the commotion. Rongxiu, the person in his arms, called out his name in a low voice. Rongxiu immediately looked down, but found that she had not woken up. She was just calling out to him unconsciously. Rongxiu brushed away the loose hair on her face, gently held her face, and planted a kiss between her eyebrows. Cherish and cherish. Chu Liuyue's slightly furrowed brows relaxed. Rong Xiu carried her horizontally, and just as he was about to walk forward, his chest suddenly shook. A streak of dark red blood flowed from the corner of Rong Xiu's lips. Digression: yesterday, I went out for an entire day. It's hard to explain in words. I'm so tired that I'm paralyzed. Continue at 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1386. Rong Xiu stopped in his tracks and tried his best to calm the surging aura in his body. He lowered his eyes and saw that she did not seem to be affected. Only then did his expression relax. After a long while, he continued to walk forward. Chu Luiyue lay in his arms. Her eyes were calm, as if she had fallen into a deep sleep. Dumpling had already returned to the size of a palm. She nestled in his chest and waited quietly. Everything seemed to have returned to normal. The bloodstains on Rong Xiu's clothes had long been dried by the fire. Only large patches of dark red were left. His steps were light. Wherever he passed, he did not leave any traces on the ground. After walking for some distance, Rong Xiu came to the side of a canyon. This was one of the 9 canyons. And their current position was the furthest one. Rong Xiu carried her and flew down. The snow was no longer falling. The surrounding temperature was much higher than outside. On one side of the stone wall, a huge dragon head was pressed tightly against it. Its eyes were 2 empty holes. It looked as if it had lost all its soul and consciousness. Only the fresh traces on the mountain wall and the ground showed that the dragon skeleton seemed to be struggling desperately to escape not long ago. Unfortunately, Rong Xiu withdrew his gaze and carefully placed Chu Luiyue behind a huge rock. Then, he sat down beside her. He leaned against the huge rock and bent his long legs, letting Chu Luiyue lie in his arms. Seeing her complexion, Rong Xiu was relieved. Then, he took out a snow-white handkerchief and slowly wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. The strong smell of blood spread. He frowned, worried that the smell would irritate her. He had come in such a hurry that he did not even have time to change his clothes. But now, naturally, he was unwilling to let her go so that she could change her clothes. He lowered his head slightly and leaned against her shoulder. He closed his soul-stirring phoenix eyes and took a light sniff. Sweet, warm, and soft. Even if her entire body was covered in messy blood, the smell on her body did not seem to change. It was always so moving. Rong Xiu hugged her with one hand and gently stroked her face with the other. His movements were very light, like a breeze. Chu Luiyue seemed to be tickled by him. She muttered something and struggled to get out. Rong Xiu's arm moved, and he silently turned her back. This time, he did not dare to move. He wrapped his arm around her waist. After not seeing her for a long time, she seemed to have become thinner. Her sleeping face was so moving. But Rong Xiu knew that she was not as calm as she looked on the surface. His body was aching, the seal was about to be broken. On the other side, with Shue's help, Elder Huafeng and the others heaved sighs of relief. There were a total of 6 people, and Shui had already taken care of half of them. The remaining 3 were also injured and their combat strength had greatly decreased. In addition, the other elders and the others blocked them together. Finally, Elder Huafeng had enough time. He stared at the Xian formation on the ground. It was clearly bone-chilling weather, but he was sweating profusely. His hands were constantly waving as he adjusted the Xian formation. Finally, at a certain moment, the 2 Xian formations were completely compatible. As the subtle fluctuation spread, Elder Huafeng's heart started to beat violently. He took a deep breath and didn't dare to blink. He carefully controlled the Xian formation. Crack. A crack appeared on the Xian formation on the ground. The Xian formation had been broken. This sudden movement caused the black-clothed men to immediately turn around. They were both shocked and furious. However, just when everyone thought that they were going to rush over to stop them, their expressions suddenly changed. Then, they quickly ran in a certain direction. Their movements were very sudden, and the elders were unable to stop them in time. Shue Shue raised her head and glanced at them. No one knew what she was thinking, but she did not chase after them. Soon, the figures of the black-clothed men disappeared from everyone's sight. Boom! A loud sound came from the ground. Elder Huafeng couldn't care less about those people and hurriedly retracted his gaze. The Xian formation on the ground was quickly dissipating. At the same time, a crack appeared on the ground. The thick ground spread to both sides. An entrance gradually appeared in front of everyone. When the ground finally stopped moving, Elder Huafeng couldn't help but gasp when he saw the scene in front of him. Even though he had already made sufficient mental preparations, he still couldn't hide his shock when he saw this scene with his own eyes. There was a huge staircase that led downwards. Looking inside, it was pitch black and nothing could be seen clearly. Only the pungent smell of blood gushed out from it. It wasn't hard to imagine what kind of scene would be below. Elder Bo Yen and the others are below? Shi Rui walked closer, her face filled with worry. You guys stay outside first. We'll go in and take a look. Elder Huafeng suppressed the emotions in his heart and said in a deep voice. Elder Dan Qing took a step forward. I'll go too. Elder Huafeng nodded. Everyone stood at the side and waited patiently. Elder Dan Qing walked to the edge of the entrance and suddenly turned around. Jiang Jiwan, who was standing behind the crowd, suddenly felt a chill down her spine and subconsciously looked up. He happened to meet Elder Danqing's gaze when he looked at Elder Dan Qing. Elder Dan Qing said indifferently. When we find Bo Yen and the others, we should be able to ask them what they have experienced during this period of time. For some reason, Jiang Jiwan suddenly shivered. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1387. I hope they're all safe. Elder Huafeng didn't notice the abnormality in Elder Danqing's expression as he walked down. Stepping on the ice-cold steps, his heart actually trembled as well. Suddenly, footsteps came from below. Elder Huafeng's heart tightened, and he immediately became vigilant. He gathered force in his palm and was about to make a move. In the next moment, a familiar voice sounded. Huafeng, it's me. Although this voice was a little weak, Elder Huafeng still recognized the other party's identity. A look of joy appeared on his face as he hurriedly looked down. Bo Yen? Is that you? The footsteps were getting closer and closer. It was obvious that someone was walking up. Soon, an old but familiar face appeared in his line of sight. It was Elder Bo Yen, whom he had not seen for a long time. Elder Huafeng hurriedly took a few steps forward and went over to support him. Bo Yen. How are you? He had known Elder Bo Yen for so many years, but this was the first time he had seen him so weak and haggard. When he got closer, he saw that Bo Yan's body was covered with several injuries. Elder Huafeng's expression changed. Let's not talk about this for now. There are still many people down there. Elder Bo Yen waved his hand and said. What? Oh, good. Good. Elder Huafeng reacted quickly and helped Elder Bo Yen up. Then, he turned around and waved at the other elders. The few of you, come with me and bring them up. Yes. The few of them followed Elder Huafeng and rushed down. The rest of the people gathered around Elder Bo Yen. Seeing him like this, everyone was shocked and stunned. In the entire Lingxiao College, Elder Bo Yen was definitely one of the strongest people. What kind of trouble did they encounter that even he was reduced to such a state? On the other hand, Elder Danqing heaved a sigh of relief when he saw him like this. Fortunately, he was still alive. Are the others okay? Elder Bo Yan's expression was solemn as his lips moved. 7 people died. 3 of them were elders of the academy. When the crowd heard this, they were all stunned. For a moment, they didn't know what to say. Elder Danqing was silent for a moment before shaking his head and sighing. We've done our best. This is already very good. You don't have to blame yourself too much. Based on the situation they had encountered before, plus the fact that they had been imprisoned here for so long, the death of 7 of them was already the best result. Pain flashed across Elder Bo Yan's face. In the end, I was too rash. He only felt that this was an opportunity for his students to gain experience, but he had neglected the possible risks that existed here. He was responsible for every one of their deaths. Elder Danqing paused. Jiang Jiwon is over there. As he spoke, he even raised his chin in that direction. Everyone looked over with different expressions on their faces. There was a problem. Why didn't Elder Danqing mention anything else but Jiang Jiwon? Furthermore, judging from his tone, it didn't sound like anything good. What? Elder Bo Yan was evidently taken aback as he turned his gaze and looked over. Sure enough, he saw Jiang Ziyuan, who was standing at the back of the crowd and trying her best to minimize her presence. Elder Bo Yan frowned and said ambiguously, "You're quite lucky." Jiang Jiwon lowered her head, her entire body stiff, and she didn't dare to move. The corners of Elder Danqing's mouth twitched, but there was no smile on his face. That's right. Elder Bo Yan and the others struggled with all their might, but 7 of them still died. On the other hand, Jiang Ziyuan escaped alone and actually withstood it. It had to be said that sometimes, the heavens were indeed blind. I've already severed my master-disciple relationship with her. As for how to deal with it in the future, it's up to you. Elder Danqing said. Elder Bo Yan looked at him with a complicated gaze. He originally thought that Elder Danqing would be reluctant. He didn't expect him to be so straightforward. However, it made sense. If anyone was used as a shield by their most trusted and beloved disciple, no matter how much affection they had, it would vanish into thin air. Furthermore, that person chose to betray him without hesitation in order to survive. It would be strange if the person who was betrayed could still be forgiven. Got it. We'll talk about it when we return to the academy. Elder Bo Yan didn't want to waste any more time and energy on Jiang Jiwon. At least for now, the safety of the other elders and students of the academy was more important. Elder Danqing nodded slightly. Knowing that he had already made a decision, he heaved a sigh of relief. He felt a little disappointed, but more like relief. How could Jiang Jiwon not understand the meaning of these words? Her legs went weak, and she almost knelt on the ground. There seemed to be something buzzing in her mind. What should I do? What should I do? Elder Bo Yan clearly wouldn't let her stay. But, Lingxiao College was one of her biggest bargaining chips. If she was chased out, wouldn't she lose all her face in the Divine Ruins world in the future? How could she continue in the future? Jiang Jiwon took a deep breath and tried her best to calm herself down. Countless thoughts raced through her mind. I have to solve this problem. I can't be expelled from Lingxiao College. Xue Xue is here too. Elder Bo Yan turned his gaze and saw Xue Xue. This title made Xue Xue's mood much better. It proudly raised its head and flew over. Fortunately, it came in time just now. Otherwise, we would really, Elder Danqing sighed. Elder Bo Yan smiled and asked Xue Xue. Since you're here, your master should be here too, right? As he asked, he raised his head and looked around. Where is he now? Xue Xue pursed its lips. Humph. Where else could he be? He must be by her side. Originally, it wanted to follow them, but its master said that there were some problems here and insisted that it come over to help. Pfft. It was obvious that he didn't want it to see his dear Seeing Xue Xue's expression, Elder Bo Yan guessed that Rongxiu had other important matters to attend to, so he didn't continue asking. He thought that when the matter was resolved, he should come over to meet them. At this moment, Elder Huafeng and the others had already brought the people from the dungeon up. The students and elders looked a little disheveled, and their bodies were more or less stained with blood. Some of them seemed to be seriously injured, so people quickly came forward to help take care of them. Fortunately, there were so many of them, and most of them had survived. If something happened to them, then Lingxiao College would be in big trouble. I didn't expect. Under such circumstances, all of you could still come back safely. Elder Danqin couldn't help but say. At first, he really thought that they, speaking of which, Elder Bo Yen narrowed his eyes, as if he was recalling something. Actually, it's a little strange. He paused with a hesitant expression. It seems that someone is secretly helping us. Digression, I think. I have a cold. Tomorrow at 12:00 in addition, the comments section is too exciting. Ha 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 ha. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1388. Elder Huafeng was a little puzzled. Who is it? Elder Bo Yen shook his head. I don't know, but when we were in danger, it seemed that someone secretly helped us and allowed us to escape. Otherwise, according to their situation at that time, it was impossible for only 7 people to die. But from the beginning to the end, the other party didn't appear, so he couldn't guess. Even you don't know? That's strange. Who would help our Lingxiao College and not leave their name? Elder Huafeng frowned, but he quickly relaxed and smiled. Forget it. I don't think I can think of anything now. Let's go back first. It's always good that someone can help. If we find out who it is in the future, we'll thank them properly. Yes. Elder Bo Yen nodded. Suddenly, he thought of something and asked, by the way, why are you here? Elder Huafeng and the others looked at each other. As expected, someone did this behind their backs. Bo Yen and the others didn't know at all. Elder Huafeng handed over a green jade token. Isn't this the one I lost before? Elder Bo Yen took it and said in surprise. We received the news from above, so we came over. But after we came, we realized that it wasn't you who did it. Elder Huafeng put his hands behind his back and pondered for a moment. Until now, we still don't know who the person behind it is. Wanzheng. As he spoke, he saw Elder Wanzheng walk out from below. Elder Wanzheng raised his head and looked over. He suddenly walked out of the dark dungeon. He was still not used to the light outside, which made him squint his eyes. Seeing that Elder Huafeng seemed a little nervous, he was a little puzzled. What's wrong? Elder Huafeng took a deep breath and said apologetically, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for not being able to help you look after Chuyu. Elder Wanzheng suddenly came to his senses. What did you say? He came with us at that time. But then a group of black-clothed men suddenly appeared and said that their master wanted to see him, so they took him away. The other party had a venerable god expert. We were helpless and could only watch as Chuyu left with them. Elder Wanzheng's expression changed and he took a few steps forward. Chuyu also came here with you. Elder Huafeng pursed his lips, his throat dry. Although it was Chuyu who took the initiative to request it, in the end, it was still his responsibility. If he had insisted on rejecting her back then, how could he have? Elder Wanzheng's face paled. The man in black, supreme god expert, weren't those the people who had attacked them before? However, why do they want to see Chuyu? Furthermore, he was the other party's master. Even though there were so many of them here, they hadn't heard anyone mention a single word about their master. Elder Huafeng closed his eyes. We don't know either. This is my fault. I'll take responsibility for everything. Elder Wanzheng raised his palm, indicating that there was no need to speak. He took a deep breath and suppressed the surging emotions in his heart with great difficulty. Where is he now? Elder Wanzheng's voice was cold. He spent a great deal of effort to restrain himself from getting angry. Because he knew that this was absolutely not Elder Huafeng's fault. But if something really happened to Chuyu, he didn't know if he could remain so calm. Elder Huafeng clenched his fists tightly, his heart filled with self-blame and guilt. Their whereabouts are mysterious. Of course, they still didn't know. Wasn't it easy for a god of venerables to take someone away and hide someone in this boundless snowfield? The surroundings fell into a dead silence. Everyone knew how much Elder Wanjing valued this disciple of his. Now that something like this had happened, how could he not be worried? I'll go look for him myself. Elder Wanjing turned around and was about to leave. Elder Bo Yen shook his head. Wanjing, you don't even know where he is now. Where are you going to look for him? Elder Wanjing stopped in his tracks and clenched his fists tightly. Was he going to just wait like this? He couldn't do it either. Elder Bo Yen pondered for a moment and said, "This place is dangerous. We have to leave with the remaining students as soon as possible. Even if the Heavenly Square Cauldron appears, we won't. The news about the Heavenly Square Cauldron is fake." Elder Huafeng couldn't help but interrupt. Then, under everyone's astonished gazes, Elder Huafeng briefly explained what had happened earlier. So, there's a 99% chance that this news was deliberately released by someone to lure everyone here. If the Heavenly Square Cauldron really appeared, then the Three-Eyed Eagle clan wouldn't use a fake Heavenly Square Cauldron to scare people. Elder Huafeng paused for a moment before he asked with uncertainty. And, from the Three-Eyed Eagle's reaction, the Heavenly Square Cauldron already had an owner a long time ago. But I didn't ask for the details. I think Chiyu might know more about it. After a short silence, Elder Bo Yen smiled bitterly. I see. Actually, we already felt that something was wrong before, but we didn't expect it to be so. It seems that everyone has been deceived this time. But I don't know who the mastermind is. Why did he go through so much trouble to lure so many first-rate families here? I can't figure it out. It was really puzzling. I think it's better if we don't continue to participate in this show. Elder Bo Yen thought for a moment and pointed at a few people. Leave a few of you here to search for Chu Yu's whereabouts. The rest of you follow the main group back, Elder Bo Yen. A young woman's voice suddenly sounded. Many people looked in the direction of the voice. Luo Shishir? Elder Bo Yen looked at her inquisitively. What do you want to say? It could be seen that Luo Shishir was a little nervous and apprehensive, but after taking a deep breath, she still spoke firmly. Elder, this place is vast and sparsely populated. It's really difficult to find someone here. Why don't I stay and search with you? As she spoke, she glanced at Luo Yenlin beside her. Luo Yenlin raised his eyebrows and felt a little helpless in his heart. However, she was his biological sister after all, so he could only dote on her. He took a step forward. What Shishir said makes sense. Elder, the few of us want to stay and look for Chu Yu together. It was always better to have more people. Elder Bo Yen was a little hesitant. But you guys were more or less injured before. In this situation, it was better to go back and recuperate as soon as possible. Who knew what would happen if they stayed here? Don't worry about this, we know what to do. Luo Yenlin and the others seemed to be very firm. Elder Bo Yen was in a dilemma. On one hand, he wanted to find Chu Yu as soon as possible. On the other hand, he didn't want the other students to be in danger. Right at this moment, Xue Xue, who had been bored to death at the side, suddenly had her eyes lit up and rushed forward. Everyone subconsciously looked over. A tall man in a black brocade robe was walking towards them. In his arms, he was hugging someone tightly. Rong Xiu. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1389. Elder Bo Yen and the others were both surprised and delighted as they hurriedly stepped forward. When they got closer, they saw that the person in his arms was actually Chu Yu. However, Chu Yu's eyes were tightly shut and his lips were pale. It seemed that his condition wasn't very good. Rong Xiu's clothes were also stained with dark blood. The thick smell of blood made people feel a little uncomfortable. One could imagine what kind of bitter battle the two of them had gone through. Elder Wanzheng was filled with worry. Chuyu, she's exhausted and has temporarily fainted. Rong Xiu explained calmly. She'll be fine after she goes back and recuperates for a while. Only then did Elder Wanzheng feel relieved. That's good. That's good. However, his eyes were still fixed on Chu Luyue. It was obvious that he was still afraid that something would really happen to her. Elder Huafeng came back to his senses. Rong Xiu, did you specially go to save Chuyu? As soon as these words were spoken, everyone fell silent for a moment. Rong Xiu nodded slightly. Many people looked at each other in dismay, their hearts filled with shock. In Lingxiao College, who didn't know that Rong Xiu had always taken care of Chuyu? The two of them had a close relationship. But today, they finally saw it for themselves. Rong Xiu actually risked his life to save Chuyu. Looking at his blood-stained body, it wasn't hard to imagine what had happened before. But he still brought Chuyu back. I'm afraid it's not an ordinary matter anymore, right? Rong Xiu had a cold personality. He wouldn't even look at unrelated people and things. But now, he was actually willing to help Chuyu like this. It was really surprising. Then, did you see those people who took Chuyu away and their master? Elder Huafeng asked anxiously. A faint light flashed in the depths of Rong Xiu's eyes. When I arrived, I only met two subordinates, but I didn't see their master. Elder Huafeng was a little disappointed but also a little relieved. That's good too. It's best that he came back safely. In this way, it would be difficult for them to find out who the mastermind was. However, the fact that the two of them were able to return safely made them feel even more fortunate. I wonder if Chuyu has seen the other party. As for these questions, he could only ask them later. Since everyone is here, let's not stay here any longer. Let's go back first. Elder Bo Yen said. Elder Huafeng suddenly thought of something. Wait. The people around him looked at him. Elder Huafeng hesitated. If we leave just like that, then, what should we do about the place where Chuyu broke through earlier? If he guessed correctly, those people should still be waiting there. I wasn't worried about anything else, I just didn't know if Chuyu had left anything over there. After all, he stayed there for quite a long time. In reality, a few days was not a long time. However, compared to others who were unable to enter, it was indeed special. Every time he thought of the scene where Chuyu was able to enter and exit freely, and the other top experts were still unable to open it even after working together, a strange and absurd feeling would always surge in Elder Huafeng's heart. Rong Xiu's lips curved up slightly. Elder Huafeng, don't worry. Based on her personality, how could she leave such a hidden danger behind? Moreover, that place was already, he paused. We'll just go back. There's nothing to see here. Rong Xiu's tone was always clear and indifferent, but it carried a noble aura that no one could disobey. Only then did Elder Huafeng relax. Since you've already said so, then, shall we leave now? Rong Xiu hugged her even tighter and looked down at her. Yes. They had to go back as soon as possible. Just like that, the hundreds of people from Lingxiao College embarked on their return journey. Fortunately, the journey back was very smooth, and they did not encounter any more trouble or danger. As long as they followed the established path back to the teleportation formation, they would be able to leave directly. The road was still covered in thick snow. Most people found it difficult to walk. Therefore, everyone's speed was not considered fast. From time to time, people would turn to look at Rong Xiu. Compared to the hardships of others, Rong Xiu seemed to be very relaxed. Although there were messy and dirty bloodstains on his body, the road was obviously not a problem for him. In fact, he was carrying someone in his arms. Many people sighed in their hearts. The strong were indeed not comparable to ordinary people. After walking for a while, Elder Wanjing finally couldn't help but ask. Rong Xiu, are you tired? I see that you're injured too. It's quite tiring to carry Chuyu like this. How about I carry him for a while? Rong Xiu's lips curved slightly, but he had no intention of letting go. Thank you, Elder. I'll do it. Elder Wanjing felt that it was a little strange, but he couldn't tell what was strange, so he could only nod. If you need help, just let me know. Rong Xiu nodded. Although the small episode on their side was quickly covered up, it still attracted the attention of many people. Some of the students behind couldn't help but whisper. Previously, there were rumors that Chuyu and Rong Xiu had a good relationship, but I didn't think much of it. Today, I finally saw it. How is this good relationship? He's taking care of him as if he's his own brother. TSK, even if it's his own brother, he might not be like this, right? Hasn't Rong Xiu always been obsessed with cleanliness and doesn't like to be close to people? Now it seems. It's just different people. I really don't know what kind of luck that Chuyu has, to be able to be favored by Rong Xiu so much. I heard that the two of them actually know each other, so their relationship is so good. Think about it, if it wasn't for this, would Chuyu have risked his life to help Rong Xiu block a blow? Rong Xiu wouldn't easily treat someone so well, right? Chuyu's origin is also quite mysterious. I've never heard of his background, maybe. Everyone was discussing and making all kinds of guesses. Obviously, today's matter had indeed given them a huge shock. I think so. Senior Rong Xiu has been in the academy for several years, right? I've never heard of him taking care of anyone like this. Even when it came to Jiang Ziyuan back then, he had never spoken up for her in public. Look at Chuyu. The difference in treatment is like heaven and earth. That's right. I used to think that he treated everyone like that, but who knew? Hey, Jiang Jiwan always said that she and Senior Rong Xiu were childhood sweethearts, and even said that she was the first candidate for the princess of the Yuntian Tower. But today, Senior Rong Xiu didn't even look at her. If there's really something between them, why would Senior Rong Xiu be so indifferent when he saw Jiang Jiwan's injured appearance? I think, before, it was just Jiang Jiwan's unrequited love. Jiang Jiwan has already broken off her master-disciple relationship with Elder Danqing. I think this time when she goes back, I'm afraid she won't even be able to stay in the academy. A group of people roared with laughter, and some of them turned their heads to admire Jiang Jiwan's expression. Jiang Jiwan's chest and abdomen seemed to be surging with magma, as if it would suddenly erupt in the next moment. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1390. But she still endured it. Now, everyone was waiting to see her make a fool of herself. Those who tried to curry favor with her in the past were now avoiding her as if there was something terrifying about her. Jiang Jiwan was furious, but she could only swallow her anger. She knew that her situation had reached the worst. If she didn't think of a way to get Elder Danqing to retract his order, then what awaited her when she returned was to be expelled from the academy. Ziyuan, what's wrong? You don't look too good. Liang Xiaoxiao walked over and seemed to be very worried. As she spoke, she sized up Jiang Jiwan from head to toe, as if she was admiring her sorry state. Jiang Jiwan sneered in her heart. If Liang Xiaoxiao really cared about her, she would have come over long ago. Why wait until now? She was just making a fool of herself. Suddenly, Jiang Jiwan recalled something from before, and her expression changed slightly. She squeezed out a smile. Don't worry, I'm fine. But you? Xiaoxiao, so many first-rate families and clans are here this time. Your Liang family should be here too, right? Liang Xiaoxiao was stunned. She didn't expect her to suddenly mention this. I don't think so. Previously, she had sent a letter to her family. Her father said that he was busy with some matters in the clan recently and couldn't get away, so he didn't plan to get involved in this mess. Why? Did you see our family before? Liang Xiaoxiao immediately became alert. Jiang Jiwan laughed. No, I'm just asking casually. After all, this place is quite dangerous. Once you're here, it won't be so easy to leave. Liang Xiaoxiao's brows furrowed quickly. For some reason, Jiang Jiwan's smile made her feel inexplicably awkward and uneasy. She was no longer in the mood to continue teasing her. After a few perfunctory words, she turned around and left. Looking at her back view, the smile on Jiang Jiwan's face slowly turned cold. Pfft. It seemed that the Liang family hadn't received the news yet. At the very least, Liang Xiaoxiao still didn't know. Liang Xiaokong was the legitimate son of the Liang family. Now that he had died for no reason, the Liang family would definitely not let this matter rest. Thinking of this, she quickly took a few steps forward. Elder Huafeng. I have something to say to you. Elder Huafeng was originally talking to Elder Bo Yan and the others, but when he heard this, he turned to look at her. What? Jiang Jiwan's hands were clasped together as if she was a little nervous. This will only take up a little of your time. Many people in the surroundings looked over curiously. Elder Huafeng pondered for a moment before walking over. Jiang Jiwan walked to the side. The two of them walked out of the crowd. Elder Huafeng simply set up a barrier to isolate the conversation between the two from the outside world. Can you tell me now? Elder Huafeng knew that Jiang Jiwan suddenly looked for him because it must be something important, so he was a little patient. He wanted to see what else Jiang Jiwan was going to do. Jiang Jiwan pursed her lips. She did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point. Elder, I want to ask you for a favor. That is, can you help persuade my master to take back his order? Elder Huafeng almost thought that he had heard wrongly. What did you say? Was Jiang Jiwan mistaken? She actually asked him to plead for leniency. Jiang Jiwan clasped her hands together with a sincere expression. Her eyes were already filled with tears. I beg of you. Master refuses to listen to my explanation and doesn't want to talk to me anymore. Only you can help me. Elder Huafeng wanted to laugh. He shook his head. Danqing is your master. He has been doting on you for the past few years. This time, he did this because you were in the wrong first. He has always been stubborn. Once he has made up his mind, he will never change it. Even if I persuade him, it will be useless. Although he didn't know what Jiang Jiwan had done, from the reaction of Danqing, Bo Yan, and the others, it was most likely an unforgivable sin. He didn't like Jiang Jiwan to begin with, so why would he be willing to speak up for her? Jiang Jiwan, you have to know that once you make a mistake, you won't have the chance to start over. With that, Elder Huafeng turned around and was about to leave. There was no point in continuing to chat with Jiang Jiwan. Because until now, she still didn't repent and tried to use all sorts of methods to continue staying in the academy. This kind of person was unreliable. Elder. Seeing Elder Huafeng's firm attitude, Jiang Jiwan made up her mind. Elder Huafeng turned around and was stunned when he saw Jiang Jiwan's gaze. In the eyes of outsiders, she still looked weak and pitiful. However, only Elder Huafeng, who was standing close to her, could see the determination and ruthlessness in her eyes. I chatted with Liang Xiaoxiao just now. She said that the Liang family didn't send anyone this time. Elder Huafeng suddenly realized something. If they know that Liang Xiaokong died here, and it's our Lingxiao College's tacit approval, then how will they react? Jiang Jiwan smiled. No matter what, the Liang family is a first-tier family. Unless it's absolutely necessary, the academy shouldn't want to fall out with them, right? Elder Huafeng finally understood Jiang Jiwan's intentions. He couldn't help but sneer. Jiang Jiwan, do you know what you're doing? Threatening an elder was a serious crime. However, Jiang Jiwan didn't seem to be afraid at all and smiled gently. Do you think I'll still care about this if I'm expelled from the academy? At most, she would fight to the death. Elder Huafeng stared at her for a long time. Danqing is really blind. He actually took you in as his disciple and doted on you for so many years. Jiang Ji-won's smile didn't change. Can you help me? Chu Luiyue felt as if he had fallen into a long dream. Countless images flashed through his mind. He had seen them before and never seen them before. He had heard of them before and never heard of them before. The chaotic memories surged out, almost giving her a splitting headache. It hurts, she frowned slightly and said softly. Rong Xiu looked at her, and his heart felt as if it had been rubbed by something. He bent his head slightly and wanted to kiss her, but he stopped just as he was about to do so. I almost forgot that there are these people around. After hesitating for a moment, he gently pressed his forehead against hers. The surroundings suddenly became much quieter. Elder Bo Yan looked at him with a panicked expression, his face full of confusion. Rong Xiu raised his head with a calm expression. She seems to have a fever. Digression. The cold is so uncomfortable. I want to lie down like a corpse. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Chapter 1391. Elder Bo Yan's expression became very strange. There didn't seem to be anything wrong with his words, but why did he feel that something was wrong? No matter how concerned he was, his actions and posture. Wasn't it a little too intimate? If a man acted like this, anyone who saw it, Elder Bo Yan felt a little flustered. Rong Xiu only said that he had known Chu Yu for a long time. At that time, he only treated the two of them as friends and Rong Xiu treated him as his younger brother. But now, Rong Xiu raised his eyes slightly and glanced over. Elder Bo Yan, do you have the clear breeze pill? Oh. Yes. Elder Bo Yan came back to his senses, took out a jade bottle and handed it over. Seeing that Rong Xiu couldn't do anything else, he took out the pill and fed it to Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue's lips were tightly shut, and she couldn't send the pill in no matter what. Rong Xiu lightly patted her shoulder and softly said, "Don't worry. Be good and eat the pill." Chu Luiyue snuggled into his embrace, but in the end, she obediently opened her mouth. Elder Bo Yan quickly fed the pill in. The clear breeze pill melted in her mouth, and Chu Luiyue swallowed the pill with her eyes still closed. The entire process was as smooth as flowing water, and couldn't be more natural. Elder Bo Yan retracted his hand and watched from the side, becoming more and more frightened. Look! When has Rong Xiu ever been so gentle and kind to anyone? Previously, Rong Xiu insisted on carrying Chu Yu back and personally taking care of him. He thought that it was because Chu Yu had blocked that attack for him, and he did it out of guilt and compensation. But now? In his impression, Rong Xiu had never been close to women. A ridiculous thought appeared in Elder Bo Yan's mind. The thought made his heart beat wildly. He quickly glanced at Rong Xiu and immediately retracted his gaze. Forget it. It's better not to ask about these things. At the very least, he shouldn't have such a strong tolerance right now. However, in the future, his attitude towards Chu Yu would probably have to change. Rong Xiu's lips curled up slightly. Of course, he could guess what Elder Bo Yan and the others would think when they saw this scene, but he didn't care. Bo Yan. Painting. At this moment, Elder Hua Feng had finished his conversation with Jiang Jiwan. Bo Yan and Elder Danqing turned to look at him. Their gazes swept past Jiang Jiwan, who was left behind. In fact, they also wanted to know what Hua Feng and Jiang Jiwan talked about. I have something that I need to tell you all. Elder Hua Feng's expression was solemn. This caused the hearts of Elder Bo Yan and the others to sink. What happened? Elder Hua Feng took a deep breath and seemed to be in a difficult position. Jiang Jiwan, who was standing not far away, stopped in her tracks. She looked up with pride and anticipation in her eyes. Very good. As long as Elder Hua Feng was willing to help, everything would be fine. Thinking that she had avoided a calamity, Jiang Jiwan couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. At this moment, Elder Huafeng suddenly turned around and waved at a certain direction in the crowd. Liang Xiaoxiao, come over here. The smile on Jiang Ziyuan's face that hadn't fully spread out froze. Uneasiness surged in her heart. Why did Elder Huafeng suddenly call Liang Xiaoxiao over? This had nothing to do with her at all. Liang Xiaoxiao was also a little confused, but she still walked forward with everyone's gazes. She first greeted each of the elders one by one, then asked with a blank expression, "What happened?" "Elder Huafeng, are you looking for me?" Elder Huafeng nodded. "There's something that I need to tell you first." The surroundings quieted down. Jiang Jiwan's heart fell into an abyss. However, everything had already begun to develop in a direction that was out of her control. "Your brother, Liang Xiaokong, brought people here earlier," Elder Huafeng said very straightforwardly. Liang Xiaoxiao's eyes widened slightly. "My third brother is here? Didn't Daddy say that he wouldn't get involved in this matter? Could it be that third brother secretly brought people here? He has always been a little radical. Recently, the other disciples in the family have also performed well. He should be anxious. This does seem like something he would do." Elder Huafeng nodded slightly. "About a few days ago, when we just arrived at the canyon, we happened to meet him. At that time, he was being hunted down, and the Liang family members who followed him were all dead." Liang Xiaoxiao's expression suddenly changed. She moved her lips. "My brother," Elder Huafeng paused. "I'm sorry. You know Lingxiao College's neutral position." Liang Xiaoxiao's legs went soft and she almost fell. An elder beside her hurriedly supported her. Liang Xiaoxiao only felt a burst of coldness from the depths of her heart. Something surged from the bottom of her eyes, causing her vision to become blurry. She opened her mouth, but found that she couldn't say anything. Only gusts of cold wind poured in from between her lips and teeth. It was so cold that her internal organs seemed to curl up. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something. She suddenly turned around and looked at Jiang Jiwan. Jiang Jiwan's heart skipped a beat, and she looked away guiltily. "But Ziyuan said before. She didn't see my brother and the others," Liang Xiaoxiao gritted her teeth and said. Elder Huafeng followed her gaze and sighed. "Actually, you can't blame her for this. After all, you two have been good friends for many years. She doesn't want you to be sad, huh?" Ling Xiaoxiao almost laughed out loud. Afraid that she would be sad? Didn't Jiang Jiwan ask those words on purpose? Why is she pretending to be a good person now? "Elder Huafeng, I wonder if you can tell me who killed my brother?" Liang Xiaoxiao clenched her hands and asked word by word. Elder Huafeng paused. "This. At that time, your brother specially asked Jiang Jiwan for help. She stayed on the spot for a long time. She should be the clearest about it." Jiang Jiwan raised her head in shock and panic. "Elder Huafeng. How can you say that?" Elder Huafeng blinked and seemed to be slightly helpless. "This is a matter of great importance. You have to tell the truth, right?" Jiang Jiwan was at a loss for words. She hurriedly ran over and rushed to Liang Xiaoxiao. "Xiaoxiao, listen to my explanation. I was, Pa." A loud slap sounded. Jiang Jiwan lost her balance and fell to the ground. Half of her face quickly turned red and swollen. However, she was already in a sorry state, so it wasn't particularly obvious when she went up. B*TCH. Liang Xiaoxiao was furious. She wanted to tear Jiang Jiwan apart. Liang Xiaokong didn't enter Lingxiao College, so he wasn't familiar with the elders and the others in the college. Among those people, he was most familiar with Jiang Jiwan. Of course, Liang Xiaoxiao knew that her third brother had feelings for Jiang Jiwan. However, Jiang Jiwan was proud and refused to agree, so Liang Xiaoxiao didn't interfere too much in this matter. However, this didn't mean that she didn't know how much Jiang Jiwan had received from her third brother. In the end, this was how Jiang Ji-won repaid her third brother. Jiang Ziyuan was stunned by the slap. She thought that victory was in her hands, but she didn't expect Elder Hua Feng to be so ruthless and directly reveal everything. Reveal everything to the world. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1392. What should I do now? Jiang Ziyuan desperately tried to think of a solution, but to her despair, she found that she had been pushed into a hopeless situation. Elder Hua Feng had taken the initiative to make the first move, so it was inevitable that he would make Liang Xiaoxiao believe his words and think that all of this was her fault. However, the real culprits were those people from Lingyun Mountain. Moreover, she was not the only one who stood by and did nothing. Why did Liang Xiaoxiao push all the blame onto her? Xiaoxiao. You've misunderstood. I had no choice at that time. Jiang Ji-won covered her face as blood slowly seeped out of the corner of her mouth. How could I be a match for those people? Liang Xiaoxiao stepped forward and grabbed Jiang Ji-won's collar, her eyes red. Those people? Who are they? Jiang Ji-won was about to say something when she saw Elder Hua Feng looking at her from the corner of her eye. He raised his eyebrows and revealed a faint smile. She suddenly shivered. No. She could not say it. If the words Lingyun Mountain came out of her mouth, then she would definitely suffer from Lingyun Mountain's revenge in the future. Lingyun Mountain was a true first-rate family. Not to mention her, even the entire Jiang family in the Immortal Water Tomb was no match for them. She must not get involved in this big trouble. I don't know. Jiang Ji-won's mouth was filled with a thick sweet taste that made her want to vomit. At that time, they were all in disguise. I didn't recognize them. Bang! Liang Xiaoxiao threw Jiang Ji-won to the ground. Although she was not as strong as Jiang Ji-won was already at the end of her rope. She did not even have the strength to fight back and could only be humiliated by the other party. Liang Xiaoxiao's chest rose and fell violently, obviously still angry. She pointed at Jiang Ji-won and smiled coldly. Good. Good. Jiang Ji-won, I've seen through you today. From now on Liang Xiaoxiao, and the entire Liang family are irreconcilable with you. Jiang Ji-won's heart thumped. What would happen if he was targeted by a first-rate family? She didn't need to use her brain to know. But this matter was clearly led by Elder Hua Feng and the others, so what did it have to do with her? At that time, no one present made a move. Suddenly, a white light flashed through Jiang Ji-won's mind. She suddenly understood something. Liang Xiaoxiao did it on purpose. Growing up in such a big family and being doted on so much, Liang Xiaoxiao was obviously not as stupid as she looked on the surface. In fact, she was very smart. She knew that this matter was related to the Academy, but she didn't want to become enemies with the Academy. Moreover, the Academy was famous in the Divine Ruins world for having a high profile and never getting involved in the affairs of any aristocratic family or clan. It was understandable that they would do this. However, someone had to be held responsible for this matter. Then, Jiang Ji-won, had become the scapegoat. In this way, she could maintain a stable relationship with the Academy and avenge Liang Xiaokong. Why not? Jiang Ji-won wanted to support herself to stand up, but after trying a few times, she found that her body was trembling violently. How did things turn out like this? She was clearly the one who had the upper hand before, but now, Elder Hua Feng finally spoke again. Xiao, actually, you can't blame her entirely for this matter. Although your brother begged her for a long time, you should be able to imagine that she was also injured at that time. How could she take care of your brother? Jiang Ji-won simply wanted to rush up and tear Elder Hua Feng's mouth apart. Stop talking. Did he think that her situation wasn't miserable enough? If this continued, how could she survive in the Divine Ruins world? A cold light flashed through Liang Xiaoxiao's eyes. Don't worry. Before the matter is investigated clearly, I won't do anything to her. But after the investigation, it would be hard to say. Jiang Jiwon's heart was in a mess. What else could she do in this situation? Suddenly, she raised her head and looked past the crowd at the tall man in black. Right now, he was probably the only one who could help her. Your Highness. Jiang Jiwon used all her strength and shouted loudly as 2 streams of tears flowed down. She didn't know where she got the strength from, but she suddenly stood up and rushed over. Although her footsteps were staggering, her speed wasn't slow. Because it was too sudden, by the time everyone reacted, she had already rushed a distance away. Elder Huafeng's face turned cold. He took a step forward and blocked in front of Jiang Jiwon. He angrily rebuked Jiang Jiwon. Are you crazy? Jiang Jiwon was unable to get past him. She was extremely anxious and her voice became even sharper. Your Highness. Say something, please. Could it be that you really have the heart to watch all of this happen? The Immortal Water Tomb is one of your 28 divisions. Even if you don't want to give face to the monk, you have to give face to the Buddha, Your Highness. Everyone looked at Rongxiu. Jiang Jiwon's words weren't without reason. The Immortal Water Tomb was one of the strongest and most powerful of the Yuntian Tower's many divisions, and Jiang Jiwon was the apple of Jiang Hetian's eye. If Rongxiu really made up his mind to speak up for her, then everyone still had to give face. Rongxiu first glanced at the person in his arms. A faint mark appeared between her eyebrows, and her eyelashes trembled slightly, as if she was dreaming of something unsettling. Rongxiu held her in his arms, then immediately turned around and looked up slightly. That pair of phoenix eyes was cold and deep, wrapped in an astonishing chill. Jiang Jiwon was swept by this gaze and actually shivered. She opened her mouth, and her sharp and piercing voice suddenly became much weaker. Your Highness, you disturbed her sleep. Rongxiu said coldly. Digression, tomorrow at 12 mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1393. The surroundings were silent. Jiang Jiwon opened her mouth slightly, her pale lips trembling in disbelief. She wanted to say something, but found that her throat was dry and her chest was tight. She couldn't say a word. Her face was burning. Rongxiu's words were even more embarrassing than Liang Xiaoxiao's slap. Disturbed. Chu Yu's sleep. Could it be that her safety was not as important as that person's sleep? Jiang Jiwon didn't ask this question, because she had already seen the answer from Rongxiu's impatient and cold face. Those phoenix eyes looking at her were cold and emotionless, distant and indifferent, without even the slightest bit of friendship. Jiang Jiwon's strength seemed to have been sucked out of her body in an instant, and her whole body went limp on the ground. No one went to help her. The snow on the ground was so cold that it seemed to seep into her bones and blood. It was so cold that she shivered all over. Rongxiu had already retracted his gaze, and continued to walk forward with the person in his arms. Not far in front of them was the transportation portal to return. Her current situation wasn't too good. She had to return to the academy as soon as possible. Seeing that resolute and cold back, Jiang Jiwon's hands clenched tightly. Finally, she couldn't help but raise her head, and unwillingly and resentfully asked, Your Highness, are you really going to abandon the Immortal Water Mausoleum? The Immortal Water Mausoleum was the head of the 28 divisions. It was of great significance to the Yuntian Tower. She didn't believe that Rongxiu would be willing to take this risk for Chu Yu. Rongxiu stood still on the transportation portal. His arms moved slightly, and the person in his arms shifted into a more comfortable position. Then, he raised his eyes and glanced at Jiang Jiwon. That glance was extremely cold and indifferent. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, containing a hint of a smile. But it seemed to be wrapped in frost, making one's heart feel cold. Before that, it's best that you think about how to tell your father about yourself, Chu Feng said. Jiang Jiwon suddenly widened her eyes. In that instant, something in her heart seemed to collapse. Yes. In the past, she was the apple of her father's eye. She was one of the top figures in the entire mausoleum of immortal water. Even if her father favored her, no one would say anything. But things were different now. She had been abandoned by Elder Danqing and was about to be expelled from Lingxiao College. Not to mention, there was also Yang Xiaoxiao's entanglement. Even if his father was willing to bear the responsibility, what about the others? She was no longer the person she used to be, and she no longer had all the privileges she used to have. At that time, why would the entire Immortal Water Mausoleum challenge the Yuntian Tower for her? There had never been a moment when Jiang Jiwan clearly understood that she really had nothing left. She had lost everything on this trip to the desolate north. Let's go. Elder Bo Yen could not be bothered with him. He turned around and gestured for everyone to follow and enter the teleportation array. Elder Huafeng wasn't in a hurry. He walked through the crowd and arrived in front of Jiang Jiwan. Jiang Jiwan seemed to have sensed something. She raised her head to look at him and met Elder Huafeng's seemingly kind but actually mocking gaze. Jiang Jiwan, you've always been smart and quick-witted. Your master has praised you more than once for your lively mind. Unfortunately, you don't understand that sometimes, cleverness overcomes cleverness. You have too many thoughts that you shouldn't have. It's harmful to yourself. Jiang Jiwan's throat choked. She suddenly stepped forward as if she wanted to grab the corner of Elder Huafeng's clothes. Elder Huafeng calmly took a step back and avoided her hand. Jiang Jiwan missed and the snow splashed on her face, making her look even more miserable. Elder Huafeng, I beg you, please give me another chance. Jiang Jiwan couldn't care about anything else at this time. She could only beg for mercy. Even if she could salvage a little, it would be good. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. Please, please let me go this time. How could she be so stupid? She actually wanted to threaten Elder Huafeng to protect everything she had? Behind Elder Huafeng, there was still the entire Ling Xiao Academy backing him up. What did she have? Elder Huafeng seemed to be smiling, but his voice was very calm. What's done can't be undone. How can you take back what you've said? Jiang Jiwan's body stiffened as if she was frozen inch by inch. She suddenly couldn't say the rest of her words. Other than being a joke, what was the use? Elder Huafeng looked at her condescendingly and then turned to look at Elder Danqing. From the beginning to the end, he didn't look over. It could be seen that he was really disappointed in Jiang Jiwan. Since you've been a student in the school for a few years, I can help you send a message back to the Immortal Water Mausoleum and ask them to send someone to pick you up as soon as possible. Oh, this is a piece of cake, so you don't have to thank me. With that, Elder Huafeng turned around and left with a smile. Jiang Jiwan's mind was in a mess. There was only one sentence left that kept lingering in her mind. It's over. It's completely over. I wonder what Jiang Jiwan did to be hated so much. Luo Shishir got on the teleportation formation and couldn't help but mutter when she caught a glimpse of Jiang Jiwan lying in the snow with a face full of despair. No matter what it is, it's not a good thing. Luo Yenlin smiled at the side. Elder Danqing treats her like a daughter and has always doted on her. To be able to force him to cut off their master-disciple relationship. That Jiang Jiwan is indeed capable. Luo Shishir nodded. Judging from the reactions of the other elders in the school, Jiang Jiwan probably wouldn't be able to stay in Lingxiao College after she returned. A good hand of cards has been played to a pulp. That's all there is to it. Thinking back to the past Jiang Jiwan, how glorious and proud she was. But now, she was so hated by others. In the future, it would be very difficult for her to have a place in the Divine Ruins world. I really don't know how she got to this point. Although Luo Shishir wasn't very familiar with her, she felt rather emotional when she thought of the great difference between her and before. Why are you thinking so much? Luo Yenlin gently knocked on her forehead. Whether she lives or dies has nothing to do with us. Just take a look. As the outstanding son of the Luo family who was very likely to inherit the position of the head of the family, Luo Yanlin had always been proud. He had never taken someone like Jiang Jiwon seriously. She was just a clown. Luo Shushu responded obediently. She curled her fingers and couldn't help but look in another direction. Even though there were so many people, she could still see Rong Xiao at a glance. He was very tall, and when he stood in a crowd, he would always stand out like a crane among chickens. Not to mention that handsome and devilish face that seemed to have been meticulously carved by the heavens, at any time, seemed to gather all the splendor and brilliance, causing everything around him to dim in comparison. This teleportation formation wasn't small, but with so many people standing together, it was still a little crowded. However, there seemed to be an invisible barrier around Rong Xiao, making it difficult for people to get close. Cold, noble, disdainful. It was as if standing closer would be blasphemy. Chu Yu was in his arms, and his appearance couldn't be seen clearly. Luo Shushu bit her lip. I wonder how Chu Yu is doing now. A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 1394. Luo Yanlin followed her line of sight and narrowed his eyes slightly. He and Rong Xiao entered the academy around the same time, so they were of the same generation. However, they didn't interact much with each other. Of course, Rong Xiao's personality was like that, and it was the same for others. Other than occasionally going out to train or carry out missions together, they would only meet a few times at the beginning of the month during the assessment. Ever since Rong Xiao was ranked first on the Azure Sky roll, he rarely came out. With Rong Xiao taking care of him personally, nothing will happen to that kid. Luo Yanlin said as he took out a jade bottle and stuffed it into his sister's hand. You're so focused on him that you forgot to take your own medicine. His gaze fell on Luo Shushu meaningfully. Luo Shushu immediately felt guilty and quickly opened the jade bottle, poured out a pill and ate it. No, I just feel that Senior Rong Xiao and Chu Yu have a good relationship. He has never treated anyone like this before, right? The holy son of the Yuntian Tower was known for his decisiveness and ruthlessness. Even in the academy, when he restrained his aura, he still made people feel that there was a distance between them. Luo Yanlin touched his chin. Actually, you can't say that. There was a person in the past, and Rong Xiao treated that person like, at this point, he suddenly paused. Like what? Luo Shushu's eyes were filled with curiosity. Could it be that there was someone in the world who was better taken care of by Rong Xiao? That was truly unbelievable. Rong Xiao was a natural king, like an iceberg that wouldn't melt for 1,000 years. It was difficult for others to even get close to him, let alone other things. It was hard to imagine that he would treat someone well. Now that he treated Chu Yu like this, it was shocking enough. If there was something worse, then, bam. Luo Yanlin knocked on her head again, this time with more force. Luo Shushu hurriedly covered her forehead in pain. Fourth brother, you, little girl, there are some things you can ask, but there are some things you don't know, understand? Luo Yanlin warned with a smile, but his eyes were very serious. Luo Shushu pursed her lips and muttered, got it. Luo Yanlin glanced over and quickly retracted his gaze. Everyone boarded the teleportation array and began their return journey. Everyone was in small groups, whispering to each other. Most of them were talking about the trip to the north of the primordial world. Especially when Elder Hua Feng, Elder Bo Yan, and the others gathered together and chatted even more seriously. After all, they still wanted to find out who was behind this. Lingxiao College had suffered a great loss this time, and they would not let it go so easily. Only Jiang Jiwon was left alone in the corner. No one spoke to her, making her seem very cold and cheerless. However, there were quite a number of people who kept looking at them in private. Most of them were mocking and ridiculing him, as if they were watching a good show. Jiang Jiwon lowered her head. She had to use all her strength to restrain the impulse in her heart. She couldn't go on like this, the outcome had already been decided. What awaited her was probably the worst possible outcome. If she still had anyone to rely on, suddenly, her eyes flickered. That's right. How could she forget that there was still that person? The journey back was dull and boring. In addition, everyone was more or less injured, so the atmosphere was gloomy. It was completely different from the excitement they had when they came. The waiting time seemed to have become exceptionally long. After an unknown period of time, a light finally appeared in front of them. Elder Bo Yen called out loudly. We're about to return to the academy. Everyone, get ready to go out. Yes. Immediately after, several elders made their moves together. The Xian formation at the exit suddenly split open from the middle. Elder Huafeng and the others rushed out one after another. Rong Xiu looked at the person in his arms. Chu Luiyue was still asleep. However, compared to before, her pale and haggard face had regained a trace of rosy color, and she seemed to be much better. Moreover, the aura on her body was also faintly strengthening. Rong Xiu's hand tightened slightly, and then with a tap of his foot, his figure flew out quickly. Huafeng. You're back. The elders who had been waiting around the teleportation formation for a long time were all energized when they saw them. Only the heavens knew how hard they had been waiting during this period of time. But soon, they realized that something was wrong. Elder Bo Yen and the others who followed behind him were actually more or less injured. It looked like they had just experienced a great ordeal. You guys, what happened to you guys? The elders looked at each other and felt vaguely uneasy. Elder Huafeng shook his head. It's a long story. First, send the students back to recuperate. We'll talk about other things later. Seeing his rare serious expression, the elders didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly took action. Some of the students who were lightly injured obeyed and went back. There were also a few who were in more serious condition and were escorted back by the elders. The more they looked, the more shocked they became. Didn't they say that they would only ask Elder Huafeng and the others to support the Heavenly Square Cauldron? How did it end up like this? Anyone could see that the situation was definitely much worse than they had expected. Rong Xiu. When the tall and slender figure appeared, the faces of the elders were filled with astonishment. When did he go over there? What was even more shocking was that he was carrying someone in his arms. Chu Yu. An elder stood close and recognized the person with sharp eyes. Because it was too unbelievable, the tone of his voice changed a little. Rong Xiu nodded lightly at the elders and then walked forward. I'll take her back to rest. Ah. Oh. Okay. Before anyone could react, Rong Xiu had already left with his people. Hey, Rong Xiu, wait for me. Elder Wanjing hurriedly followed after him. Their figures quickly disappeared behind the undulating mountain peaks, leaving behind a bewildered expression on everyone's faces. After a long while, someone stammered, What's going on? Elder Bo Yen laughed bitterly. If only he knew. Moreover, he didn't want to figure it out now. Inside, there would be a lot of problems. Rong Xiu has always known his limits. Don't worry about him. Let's clean up this mess first. Hearing Elder Bo Yan's words, the others didn't ask any more questions and only responded in unison. Yes. Rong Xiu directly brought Chu Luiyue back to his residence. After entering the room, he carefully put her down. Elder Wanjing hurriedly followed behind them. Rong Xiu, how's Chu Yu? Rong Xiu covered her with a blanket and gently rubbed his finger on her soft hand twice before putting her hand under the blanket. This action was extremely subtle, and because his back was facing Elder Wanjing, the latter didn't notice. When Elder Wanjing walked over, Rong Xiu straightened his body and placed a hand on Rong Xiu's forehead. The fever seems to have subsided a little, but I don't know when she'll wake up. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1395. Why is there no sign of him waking up after such a long journey? Elder Wanzhang's heart ached and he was worried. The Chuyu he saw was always alive and kicking, cunning and quick-witted. However, the Chuyu now lay quietly and weakly on the bed. He was as fragile as glass that would shatter at the slightest touch. How can this be? What did this child go through? Rong Xiu paused and tucked Chu Luiyue in. Elder Wanzhang, let's talk outside. He would disturb her if he stayed. Elder Wanzhang quickly nodded in agreement. Yes, yes. Let's go outside and let him rest. He deliberately lowered his voice when he said this, as if he was afraid that he would disturb Chu Luiyue. Rong Xiu's thin lips curled up slightly. Please go ahead. Elder Wanzhang was very reluctant. He looked back 3 times with every step. It was only when Rong Xiu said that he had set up a Xian formation that he would know immediately if anything happened inside that Elder Wanzhang was relieved. The two of them walked out and sat down on the stone bench in the courtyard. I know you have a lot of questions. If there's anything you want to ask, just say it. Rong Xiu will tell you everything he knows. After sitting down, Rong Xiu went straight to the point. He was very sincere in front of Elder Wanzhang. If it was someone else, it would have been fine. However, Elder Wanzhang was Chu Liuyue's master now. He was one of the people who had the most right to care about her. Elder Wanzhang was indeed full of questions. There were too many things he wanted to ask. However, when he heard Rong Xiu's words, he did not know where to start. After thinking seriously for a while, he sorted out his thoughts and finally asked, "How's Chu Yu's condition now?" He had been in such a hurry that he had forgotten to take Chu Yu's pulse personally. However, Rong Xiu was also a celestial physician. He was also the one who brought Chu Yu back. He should know better. Rong Xiu said, "Don't worry about that. Her body is fine." Although he had suffered some injuries before, he could recover quickly after recuperating for a period of time. He paused slightly. After all, as you know, she just broke through to the 9th stage. At this time, the recovery ability and so on were all very strong. Not to mention her. Hearing this, Elder Wanzhang let out a sigh of relief. He clenched and loosened his hand. Countless complicated emotions flashed through his eyes. In the end, he could only shake his head and sigh. I don't know whether I should be worried about him or happy for him. In just a few days, Chu had broken through from a rank 8 warrior to a rank 9 warrior. He had already heard about it from Elder Huafeng. It was just that he was more worried at that time, so he didn't think too much about it. Now that everyone had returned and Chu Yu's condition seemed to have stabilized, he finally realized how shocking this matter was. How many people in the world could encounter such a fortuitous encounter? This time, so many people went to the northern border of the Great Desolate Land, but in the end, they all returned in failure. Only Chu Yu, who didn't even have the time to follow at the beginning, became the winner. This brat's luck is really extraordinary. When he woke up and thought about it, Elder Wanzhang could only use the word luck to describe this matter. He was already shocked enough when he saw that kid break through to the 8th stage with his own eyes. He didn't expect that not long after, he would actually, according to his speed, he might suddenly break through to the divine realm and become a divine rank expert one day. Elder Wanzhang relaxed a little and couldn't help but tease. Rong Xiu's eyes drooped slightly as his thin lips curled up. Maybe. Anyway, as long as he's fine, this old man's heart will be at ease. Elder Wanzhang wiped the sweat off his forehead. By the way, Huafeng and the others said that Chu Yu was called away by a group of mysterious men in black. Do you know anything about it? After all, he was saved by Rong Xiu. If there was anyone who knew anything, it would be him. Rong Xiu shook his head and said the same thing as before. When I went, I didn't see their so-called master. Moreover, the other party was very cunning and didn't leave any clues. This is difficult, Elder Wanzhang frowned. If that's the case, we can only wait for Chu Yu to wake up before we can find out anything. But who knew when he would wake up? Rong Xiu smiled. You don't have to worry. I will take good care of him during this period of time. When he wakes up, perhaps everything will have an answer. Elder Wanzheng nodded. That's the only way. Oh right, there's one more thing. As he spoke, he looked at Rongxiu hesitantly. You and Chu Yu. What is your relationship? Elder Wanzheng was very conflicted when he asked this question. Previously, he only thought that the two of them were close friends. Rongxiu took care of Chu Yu as his younger brother. But judging from the situation in the past few days, it was clear that Rongxiu's eyes flickered. There seemed to be waves in his deep almond-shaped eyes. After a long while, his lips curled into a smile. She is very important to me. To be more precise, she was the most important person to him. Elder Wanzheng was stunned. It was very rare for Rongxiu to say something like this. After all, this was a person who could kill the people of the Yuntian Tower without blinking an eye. Rongxiu obviously didn't want to reveal too much, so Elder Wanzheng knew that he shouldn't ask anymore. He thought about Rongxiu's words carefully several times in his heart and finally looked at him. That's good. As long as Rongxiu could protect him, what else did it matter? According to Chu Yu's character, he might get into trouble in the future. Just like this time, those people didn't choose anyone and only took him away. If it wasn't for Rongxiu, he really didn't know what the result would be. Elder Wanzheng stood up. Everyone has just returned and there are many things to deal with. During this period, it should be more chaotic outside. I'll have to trouble you to take care of Chu Yu. Rongxiu also stood up and nodded slightly. Don't worry. The entire Lingxiao College was indeed chaotic. More than 300 students and elders had walked on the line of life and death. They had almost been completely wiped out in the primordial north region. This was something that the college had never encountered in hundreds of years. In addition to comforting everyone, Elder Bo Yan and the others had already started to investigate this matter. The main point was the news of the appearance of the Heavenly Square Sacred Cauldron. Where did it come from? The person who spread this fake news was basically the mastermind behind this. The atmosphere of the entire college became tense. Everyone was on high alert. Even the air seemed to have frozen. And in this serious and cold atmosphere, something else happened that caused waves in everyone's hearts. Jiang Ji, one of the Jiang family of the Immortal Water Hill, was officially expelled from Lingxiao College. Digression, 6:00 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1396. Thanks to Elder Hua Feng's enthusiastic help, the Immortal Water Mausoleum received the news immediately. Jiang Hetian rushed to the school as fast as he could. Lingxiao College was in a critical period and was heavily guarded. No one could enter or leave as they pleased. According to Elder Bo Yan, they should have sent Jiang Ji1 out of the school and let the Jiang family pick her up from Fang State City. However, considering that the matter was blown out of proportion and would be bad for the school's reputation, they let her in. Of course, only Jiang Hetian was allowed to enter the school. The rest of the Jiang family who came with him were all kept out of the barrier. Jiang Hetian felt deeply humiliated, but with the matter at hand, he couldn't care less. In a hall in the school. As soon as Jiang Hetian entered, he saw several elders seated. His precious daughter, Jiang Ji1, was standing alone in the middle of the hall. The atmosphere was stagnant and seemed to be freezing. Jiang Hetian's heart sank. This atmosphere was enough to explain too many things. Jiang Hetian of the Immortal Water Mausoleum greets the elders. He suppressed the uneasiness in his heart and bowed politely as usual. Hearing the voice, Jiang Ji1 trembled and slowly turned around. The father and daughter looked at each other. Jiang Hetian's heart trembled violently. Because the current Jiang Ji1 was too haggard and disheveled. Her face, neck, and even wrists were clearly marked with scars. Her bright, watery eyes were bloodshot and even a little sluggish. There were dark circles under her eyes, and it was obvious that she didn't sleep well. Ziyuan. Jiang Hetian's heart ached. He hurried a few steps to Jiang Ji-won's side. You. What happened to you? Seeing his anxious face, Jiang Ji-won's nose twitched, and she couldn't help but cry. Father. I'm sorry. Her reaction made Jiang Hetian even more worried and nervous. He patted her shoulder lightly and whispered a few comforting words. Don't worry, I'll definitely uphold justice for you this time. As he spoke, he took a step forward and cupped his hands at the elders present. Elders, if you want to remove Ziyuan's name, you should at least give a reason, right? What's going to happen to her in the future? In the message that Lingxiao College had sent to him, they had only mentioned that they would be expelled, but they had not explained the reason. This was what puzzled him the most. He knew that not long ago, Wei Shiping's name had also been removed. However, everyone knew the reason. Even now, Wei Shiping did not have the face to return to the Qinggupa family way. But when it came to them, how could they be so muddle-headed? He had to get an explanation. Elder Huafeng smiled. Patriarch Jiang, it must have been hard for you to come all the way here. Why don't you sit down and talk? Jiang Hetian refused. I won't be sitting. Elders, if you have something to say, just say it. He was so angry that he didn't even want to give her any face. However, Elder Huafeng didn't care about this at all. He nodded and did not continue to persuade him. Patriarch Jiang, to be honest, it's because we want to save some face for you and the immortal water tomb that we didn't announce the reason. If you must know, why don't you ask Jiang Ji-won yourself? Jiang Hetian's heart sank when he heard this. The other party's attitude was so calm. Could it be that Jiang Ji-won really did something wrong? Oh, right, there's something that you might not know yet. Elder Huafeng reminded him. Before she was expelled, Elder Danqing took the lead in severing his master-disciple relationship with her. These words were undoubtedly adding insult to injury. Jiang Hetian was originally full of anger, but when he heard these words, he couldn't help but feel a little suspicious. He looked at Jiang Ji-won suspiciously. Ziyuan, what's going on? Jiang Ji-won knelt on the ground with a plop. Father. I was just confused for a moment. Please help me beg the elders and master. I don't want to leave the academy. I can't be expelled. Her tearful appearance made Jiang Hetian's remaining half of his heart turn cold. If you don't want to say it, this old man will. Elder Danqing, who had been silent, finally spoke. His gaze slowly swept over Jiang Ziyuan's body. His tone was calm, as if he was just talking about an unimportant matter. At that time, we arrived at the northern border of the primordial world together and were attacked halfway. Jiang Ji-won betrayed us in order to survive alone. Jiang Ji-won's face turned ashen. At that time, all of us planned to split into two groups and escape separately. Jiang Ji-won was the first to be caught by the other party, and then, she told the other party everything. Then, while the other party wasn't paying attention, she ran away alone. With every word that Elder Danqing said, Jiang Ji-won's despair surged up a little more, and in the end, she was completely swallowed up. She's quite lucky. After such a torment, she actually managed to survive. However, I heard that it also caused a lot of trouble for Huafeng and the others. Compared to what you guys did, we're nothing. Elder Huafeng waved his hand as if he didn't care. She just killed a nine-tailed blue crow and almost caused us to die under the claws of the nine-tailed blue crows. This understatement of sarcasm made Jiang Hetian feel as if a fishbone was stuck in his throat, and his face turned green and white. Elder Danqing looked at him and sipped his tea unhurriedly. Now, Patriarch Jiang, do you still want an explanation? Pengmin Mountain. It was as quiet as ever. Even though the outside was turbulent, no one dared to come here to disturb them. Inside the tower, in an empty room, the 7 fan doors floated quietly. A faint glow shone on the black jade floor, pure and holy. Suddenly, a slight fluctuation came from one of the doors. This movement immediately attracted Elder Meng's attention. A deep and old voice sounded in the room, with a hint of puzzlement. As time passed, the ripples on the door gradually grew stronger. Even the entire door frame started to tremble slightly. It was as if something was about to rush out. Could it be that the girl is back? Elder Meng's voice was filled with shock and surprise. Other than her, no one else could cause such a commotion. But, why wasn't there any news from outside? If that girl was really back, Bo Yen and the others should have come to tell him long ago. Dong! The power inside began to hit the door, as if it was trying to break free. As expected, you're still as restless as her. Elder Meng snorted softly. An invisible and majestic force suddenly converged from all directions, enveloping the door within. Being suppressed, the fluctuation on the door gradually decreased. However, after a moment of silence, there was another sound of impact from behind the door. Dong dong. Dong dong. One sound, one after another, was extremely rhythmic. In the calmness, there was passion and intensity. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.